Chapter 328. The white light from the transporting formation dissipated, and Mo Tiange looked around. Elder Yi, we meet again. Wei Haolan stood in front of her with a smile. 40 years had passed, but her cultivation level hadn't changed, and her appearance hadn't changed much either. Wei Haolan was only about 100 years old back then. Even if she couldn't make a realm breakthrough in her lifetime, she still had more than 200 years to live. Judging from her current appearance, she seemed to be living a good life. Mo Tiange also smiled. Sect Head Wei, it's been many years since we last met. How have you been? Thanks to Elder Ye's blessings, I've been very happy these years. The two of them looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. Wei Haolan watched as the two of them walked out of the transporting formation. She looked at Tang Shen reproachfully. Junior Marshal Brother Tang, how could you be so careless? You've been missing for so long, we almost thought you died. Tang Shen lowered his head and said apologetically, Senior Marshal Sister Sect Head, I'm sorry. I overestimated myself and didn't handle things well. Wei Haolan didn't blame him anymore. She just said, since you're back and you've contacted Elder Yi, let's forget about this matter. Junior Marshal Brother Tang, you've worked hard these past dozen years. We'll talk about other things later. Go rest first. Yes. Tang Shen grunted in response. He then reached into his Qingkuan bag and took out the medicine. Senior Marshal Sister Sect Head, these are medicinal pills for core formation that Elder Yi helped me buy. In addition, Elder Yi also helped me buy a high-grade breath-concealing technique. These spirit stones were paid for by her first. Wei Haolan took them then thanked Mo Tiange with a smile. Elder Yi, this time, it's all thanks to you. Mo Tiange smiled and waved her hand. Since I'm Bishuan Court's guest elder and I've accepted your offerings, I should do something for Bishuan Court when I need it. Upon hearing what Wei Haolan said, Wei Haolan no longer thanked her. She said to Tang Shen gently, Junior Marshal Brother Tang, you don't need to worry. You're working for the school. Since you lost this batch of spirit stones, the school will take care of it for you. Rest assured. Tang Shen felt slightly relieved. In order to buy medicinal pills for core formation, he had brought a huge number of spirit stones with him this time. After losing these spirit stones, he felt very remorseful. Only after he heard Wei Haolan's consolation did he feel a bit better. Thank you, Senior Marshal Sister Sect Head. I'll take my leave first. Yes. As Wei Haolan and Mo Tiange watched Tang Shen leave through the tunnel with his head lowered, Wei Haolan and Mo Tiange looked at each other and smiled. Wei Haolan made an inviting gesture then started walking together with Mo Tiange. As they walked, she said, in fact, I originally didn't agree to let Junior Marshal Brother Tang go, but Junior Marshal Brother Tang always yearned to go to Kunwu. Seeing that he's become more and more mature in handling matters these past few years, I took the risk and let him go. I didn't expect something would still go wrong. Mo Tiange smiled faintly and said, this matter can't be blamed on him. It's just that the timing he went to Kunwu wasn't right. I know. Wei Haolan sighed. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said nothing. Junior Marshal Brother Tang has been a lot more careful these past few years, but his constitution is still a disaster. If he goes out, it's hard to guarantee that he won't have an accident. Mo Tiange smiled faintly. This problem can't be solved unless he forms his gold core one day and successfully cultivates the breath-concealing technique. It's easier said than done. Wei Haolan rubbed the space between her eyebrows. Junior Marshal Brother Tang's cultivation has been going smoothly these past few years, but he's still a fine line away from the late stage of the foundation building realm. He's never been able to make a breakthrough. This kind of thing can't be rushed. Mo Tiange comforted her. Some people have an epiphany in one day, while some people stay where they are for dozens of years. Breaking through realms depends on personal experience. Wei Haolan smiled. Since Elder Yi has returned, I have to ask you to give me some advice. Mo Tiange only smiled. I can only give some advice about realm breakthroughs. I can't give too many pointers. After all, everyone's situation is different. I understand what Elder Yi said. After walking for a while, Wei Haolan suddenly turned to look at Mo Tiange and said with a smile, "Look at my memory. I actually forgot such an important thing. Elder Yi, I still haven't congratulated you for advancing to the core formation realm. You're not even 100 years old, but you're already a core formation cultivator. You can be considered a rare genius in 1,000 years." Mo Tiange had heard a lot about geniuses in Kunwu. She smiled and shook her head. "Sect head Wei, don't praise me. Not to mention rare geniuses in 1,000 years, Xianqing School alone has produced 3 cultivators who advanced to the core formation realm before 100 years old. I really can't accept this." "Oh, right." Wei Haolan nodded, looking at her with endless envy. "It's really because Xianqing School has produced geniuses one after another in the past several hundred years." Mo Tiange just smiled, but she was actually very proud of herself. Xianqing School had indeed produced many outstanding cultivators in the past several hundred years. Other cultivation groups would be considered good if they had 1 or 2 in 1,000 years. Wei Haolan's gaze shifted, then she said, "This is only one of the reasons. Not long ago, the manager of Mount Yuheng's Guildhall reported that Elder Yi already performed dual cultivation, and your husband is Xianqing School's new nascent soul cultivator, Lord Daoist Shoujing. I really have to congratulate Elder Yi." Mo Tiange smiled. "Thank you. Sect head Wei's news is really fast." Wei Haolan shook her head and said, "Elder Ye's dual cultivation was 2 years ago, but I only learned about it recently. Our Bishuan Court's Guildhall in Kunwu is still not doing enough. This isn't a secret, so we should have reported it earlier." What she said was related to Bishuan Court's specific affairs. Mo Tiange was only a nominal guest elder, so she just smiled and didn't say much. The two of them quickly left through the tunnel and arrived at the conference hall. Wei Haolan invited Mo Tiange to sit down, then asked a disciple to serve tea. She then brought up another matter. "Elder Yi, although I asked Elder Yi to send junior martial brother Tang back, there's no need for you to be transported here together. Presumably, Elder Yi doesn't lack spirit stones and is in a hurry to come and get them, right?" Mo Tiange smiled. "In any case, I'm Bishuan Court's guest elder. We haven't seen each other for many years, so isn't it good for me to come and take a look?" "Of course it's good to come and take a look, but my intuition has always been very accurate." Faced with Wei Haolan's faint smile, Mo Tiange could only sigh. "All right, I do have some matters," Wei Haolan then asked, "Do you need help with anything?" "Not at the moment." Mo Tiange pondered in her heart. This matter was still unclear, so she didn't want to talk about it in detail. After all, this matter was a bit difficult, and Bishuan Court didn't even have a core formation cultivator now. Wei Haolan was a smart person, so she didn't pursue the matter. She just said, "If there's anything you need help with, Elder Yi, please don't hesitate to ask." "Thank you." Mo Tiange then asked about Bishuan Court's situation in the past several decades, and Wei Haolan answered her questions one by one. Back then, after Bishuan Court was almost exterminated, an opportunity arrived. The discovery of the Spirit Stone vein in the Eastern Sea and the change in the group's rules allowed Bishuan Court's strength to recover rapidly. In the past several decades, the number of aura refining and foundation building disciples they had already surpassed their original number. The only thing they lacked now were core formation cultivators. Mo Tiange then asked, "Elder Tang still in the middle stage of the foundation building realm? Are there already cultivators in the group who can advance to the core formation realm so quickly?" Back then, Tang Shen was chosen as a temporary elder because his ability in fights of magical powers had greatly improved. In terms of cultivation level, the middle stage of the foundation building realm wasn't bad either. Wei Haolan sighed. "How can it be that fast?" "Right now, there's a senior martial sister and a senior martial brother in the group who've reached the late stage of the foundation building realm, but they haven't reached the peak stage yet. I'm just taking precautions. After all, core formation medicinal pills aren't easy to find, they might not be found even after several decades." Mo Tiange nodded silently. Back then, Shengguan Yunhao was a good example. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't find core formation medicinal pills for so long and thus had no hope of advancing to the core formation realm, he wouldn't have entered a demonic barrier so easily and betrayed the group. This time, if it weren't for Elder Yi, we wouldn't have been able to get these core formation medicinal pills, so I still have to express my gratitude to Elder Yi. Mo Tiange smiled and waved her hand. Sect Head Wei, I really can't accept your thanks over and over again. Wei Haolan was startled, but she soon smiled again. Alright, I won't say thank you words in the future. It's fine to just keep them in my heart. After chatting for a while, Wei Haolan saw that Mo Tiange had nothing else to say, so she tactfully stopped talking and asked someone to take Mo Tiange to rest. After leaving Bishuan Court's conference hall, Mo Tiange strolled around. Traces of the destruction caused by Ren Yufeng back then had already disappeared. Those pavilions, terraces, and buildings had all been renovated, and the monastery gate had also been rebuilt and was constantly decorated with flowers and plants. The female cultivators' skillful hands made Bishuan Court look even more beautiful and pleasant than those big cultivation groups in Kunwu. Along the way, many aura refining disciples came and went. There were both male and female cultivators. When they saw her, all of them widened their eyes in astonishment. This was because her clothes were different from theirs, but it was also because of her cultivation level. A core formation cultivator. She's actually a core formation cultivator. The aura refining disciple who led the way for her had a proud look on his face as he announced to these people, "This is our guest elder, Elder Yi." Thus, along the way, countless disciples saluted her. Greetings to Elder Yi. Mo Tiange felt very helpless. She never liked this kind of ostentatious display. Fortunately, the place she wanted to go wasn't far, so she soon arrived at the VIP building. Originally, Wei Haolan wanted to let her stay in the Dao Achieving Pagoda, but Mo Tiange refused. The Dao Achieving Pagoda was, after all, the symbol of Bishuan Court, and she wasn't a real elder of Bishuan Court. She only returned to Linhai to look for the cultivation experience Mo Yaoqing left behind. Just now, Wei Haolan already gave her the spirit stones needed to buy cultivation techniques and medicinal pills. She also gave her more than 10,000 spirit stones, saying she was a guest elder's sacrifice. In fact, she obtained a lot from Bishuan Court, so she really didn't want to take advantage of them. Mo Tiange stayed in the VIP building for several days. During her stay, Wei Haolan invited her to meet Bishuan Court's foundation building cultivators. Although female cultivators were still dominant, Bishuan Court had quite a few foundation building male cultivators in recent years. Seeing how young she was, the newly advanced foundation building cultivators were extremely astonished. It wasn't easy for a core formation cultivator to come to Bishuan Court, so Mo Tiange had to pass on some cultivation experience to these foundation building cultivators. In addition, she also accepted Wei Haolan's invitation to teach several cultivators who had hopes of advancing to the core formation realm. By the time everything was done, 7 or 8 days had already passed. Mo Tiange wasn't in a hurry. Although Mo Yaoqing's jade slip recorded the route, she still had to slowly comprehend it. She could take advantage of this time to ask Wei Haolan some things about the sea. Although she was already in the core formation realm and her cultivation level was much higher than Wei Haolan's, she had no experience going to the sea except for that one time in the northernmost sea 60 years ago. Furthermore, that time wasn't accurate. The situation in the northernmost sea was very different from that in the eastern sea. When Wei Haolan heard Mo Tiange wanted to go to the sea, she didn't ask much. She just told Mo Tiange in detail about the general things she had to pay attention to when going to the sea, as well as the relatively dangerous sea beasts in the vicinity. However, because of her cultivation level, these things could only be used as references. After all, Wei Haolan also hadn't been to the deeper parts of the sea. Mo Yaoqing's Immortal's Cave, on the other hand, was in the depths of the eastern sea. Several days passed. When Mo Tiange finished preparing everything, she finally set out. Chapter 329. Elder Yi, the southeast is where our spirit stone vein is. The sea in this area is safe and doesn't have any dangerous sea beasts. In addition, this is a sea map passed down by the sect's founders. It records the distribution of sea beasts, but because of our limited cultivation levels, we haven't been to many places, so it might not necessarily be trustworthy. Mo Tiange took the sea map from Wei Haolan and said sincerely, "Thank you. With this sea map, my trip will be much safer." Mo Tiange smiled and waved her hand. "Elder Yi, you're our Bichuan court's guest elder and we're indebted to you, so this kind of trivial matter is something we should do." Mo Tiange also understood Bichuan court's current situation. They had spirit stones and disciples, but what they lacked was some ways to obtain scarce resources and guidance from high-level cultivators. Therefore, a guest elder like her was very important to Bichuan court. Wei Haolan would definitely do her best to satisfy Mo Tiange's request and ask her to help Bichuan court. Wei Haolan didn't only agree to Mo Tiange's request only because they went through trials and tribulations together several decades ago and because the sect founder was her ancestor. After all, Wei Haolan had an extraordinary status in Xianqing school. It would be much easier to get some medicinal pills or even core formation cultivation techniques if they could form a relationship with her. Moreover, Wei Haolan's cultivation level was high and her future was promising. If she formed her nascent soul in the future, Bichuan court would benefit greatly as long as she occasionally looked after them. Nevertheless, Mo Tiange didn't care about Wei Haolan's plan. In any case, who could truly be good to someone without selfish motives in the cultivation world? It was enough as long as Wei Haolan didn't have any bad intentions. Besides, Wei Haolan and Bichuan court had that kind of relationship, so she was much more reliable than strangers. As Mo Tiange put away the sea map, she suddenly remembered something and said, "Sect head Wei, there's something I want to ask you." "Oh? Please speak, Elder Yi." Mo Tiange said, "There's a fishing village near Linhai town, and there's a fisherman named Shui San. When I came to Linhai 60 years ago, I had a fated encounter with his family. He had a daughter who was tested to have 5 spiritual roots, so she should be 68 years old now. When Linhai was in chaos, I don't know how they were doing. Please help me ask around." Upon hearing this was such a trivial matter, Wei Haolan readily agreed. "Rest assured, Elder Yi. It's just a trivial matter. Thank you in advance." Mo Tiange then raised her head and gazed at the eastern sea. As far as the eye could see, the sea was boundless. The sea breeze blew gently, and the ripples were clear and crystalline. When the wind was gentle and the sun was bright, the sea was so calm and beautiful. However, when it was angry, the waves were turbulent. In the face of its fury, humans, even cultivators, would find it difficult to calmly face it. Only those who reached the nascent soul stage and had the ability to move mountains and drain oceans would be able to face the fury of the ocean without fear. Mo Tiange speculated that since Mo Yaoqing set up her immortal's cave in the depths of the eastern sea, there was bound to be danger there. Although they had a map of the route she left behind, there were bound to be high-level sea beasts lurking in the depths of the sea. Perhaps it was because of this consideration that they had set up such a complicated restriction. However, she was not afraid. First of all, her natal magic weapon, the Heaven and Earth Fan, had reached the advanced level. This treasure's lethality wasn't very high, but its defensive and trapping abilities were top-notch. Coupled with her cloud-treading boots, white silk handkerchief, and virtual sky world, she had a lot of life-saving means that ordinary core formation cultivators simply couldn't compare to. As long as she wasn't too unlucky, her life wouldn't be in danger. "Sect head Wei, I'll take my leave first." Wei Haolan cupped her hands. "Elder Yi, come back soon." This time, Wei Haolan was much more polite. Although the two of them were still as close as before, it was inevitable that there was some respect in her tone. Mo Tiange smiled. Clouds formed under her feet and she soared into the sky, turning into a flight light that swept towards the depths of the sea. After advancing to the core formation realm, a top-grade magic weapon like the cloud-treading boots could truly display its power. When she was building her foundation, although she could also fly while wearing the cloud-treading boots, her speed wasn't as fast as now. After she advanced to the core formation realm, when she used the cloud treading boots, clouds would form under her feet and these clouds would carry her to fly, saving her a lot of spiritual power. A core formation cultivator's speed was extremely fast. In just half a day, she had already passed the location of the spirit stone vein Wei Haolan mentioned. If she flew further into the depths of the Eastern Sea, she didn't know what she would encounter. Mo Tiange pondered for a moment. She decided to fly a bit higher to avoid disturbing the powerful sea beasts, but she couldn't fly any higher because she still had to look at the surface of the sea to find the marks Mo Yaoqing left behind. More than 5,000 years had passed. Mo Tiange wasn't sure whether the marks Mo Yaoqing left behind were still effective or not. However, with Mo Yaoqing's intelligence, she should have thought of this problem. With this thought in mind, Mo Tiange threw these doubts to the back of her mind and flew at full speed. This flight lasted for 5 days. During these 5 days, Mo Tiange changed from only seeing small sea beasts of the first and second rank at first to now, she often saw the appearance of fourth and fifth rank sea beasts. She was very cautious along the way. If she attracted the attention of these sea beasts, she would fly a bit higher to hide. On the 6th day, Mo Tiange finally found an island full of spiritual aura on the sea. This island was extremely small, only about 500 square meters in circumference. Maybe this island would be swallowed by a high tide. The spirit veins weren't very good either. The spiritual aura was faint, and it was only a very small spirit vein. Mo Tiange was very pleasantly surprised because there was a record of this island in Mo Yaoqing's jade slip. However, Mo Yaoqing said it was a bit bigger. After all, 5,000 years had passed, so it was normal for the area of the island to change. In the sea, this kind of island could disappear overnight. Mo Tiange flew around the island in the air but didn't find any traces of high-rank sea beasts in the surroundings. She then carefully landed on the island. She didn't know how long it had been since people came to this island. It was densely covered with vine-like plants, almost covering the whole area except for the beach. Upon seeing this, Mo Tiange carefully released Xiaohua from her spiritual beast pouch. Mo Yaoqing's jade slip said these vines were very strange. They seemed to be alive, and as long as there was a living thing, they would entangle and swallow it. In this world, beasts had always been herbivores. Herbivores like these violated common sense. Abnormalities were monsters, so these vines could also be said to be a kind of demonic grass. Because of this, there were very few sea beasts near this island. If those low-rank sea beasts accidentally came here, they would be swallowed by these vines. However, these vines were not without natural enemies. If it was a rank 5 demonic beast or above, it would be able to fight against them. Moreover, some sea beasts liked to eat these vines because these vines often ate demonic beasts and contained more spiritual qi than ordinary spirit grasses. Swallowing these vines would also be beneficial to one's cultivation. The reason why Mo Yaoqing recorded these islands in the jade slip was because there was still a long way to go. The sea wasn't like land. You could stop and rest when you were tired of flying. It was normal to not see land for several days or even dozens of days. Therefore, if someone wanted to find her immortal's cave, they would need to rest on this island. Although flying consumed very little spiritual aura, if one couldn't rest, even if one's spiritual aura was replenished by spirit recovering pills, the mental fatigue would be unbearable. Once one's mental state was bad, one's reaction to danger would be slow, and their strength would drop a lot. Therefore, Mo Yaoqing recorded the locations of many islands that could provide temporary rest on the jade slip. Mo Tiange had the virtual sky world, so this problem originally didn't exist. The reason why she looked for these islands was firstly to use as a reference, and secondly, because Mo Yaoqing remembered the characteristics of these vines. She was interested and wanted to collect some. After all, this was the Eastern Sea where few people lived. Bichuan court cultivators' levels were still low, so they couldn't come here. These vines were also rare, so collecting some might be useful in the future. As soon as Xiaohua came out of the spiritual beast bag, it rushed towards the island with great joy. Maybe it was because it hadn't come out of the spiritual beast bag for a long time. Upon seeing this, Mo Tiange hastily stopped it. Xiaohua, come back. Xiaohua stopped for a moment, then turned to look at her. It blinked its black eyes, then turned to stare at the green vines, looking like it really wanted to go there. Upon seeing this, a thought emerged in Mo Tiange's mind. Could it be that not only sea beasts, but even a land-based spiritual beast like Xiaohua also instinctively wanted to eat these? Mo Yaoqing didn't say what would happen to spiritual beasts if they ate these vines. She only briefly mentioned the characteristics of these vines in the jade slip and told them to pay attention to them when resting here. However, since sea beasts like to eat them, it should be the same for spiritual beasts, right? With this thought in mind, Mo Tiange said to Xiaohua, Xiaohua, use your magic to attack them. Xiaohua and her mind were connected, so after receiving her order, it immediately jumped and spewed out sun-real fire. All spiritual herbs were afraid of things like gold and fire. Even if these vines were demonic herbs, they were no exception. Once Xiaohua's sun-real fire came out, the vines, which were originally as peaceful as ordinary plants, instantly rose to avoid the sun-real fire. Upon seeing this, Xiaohua's eyes widened. It jumped up and shot another sun-real fire at the roots of the vines. This time, even if the vines tried to dodge in panic, they couldn't escape. The roots were immediately burned black, and the branches and leaves softened. Woo-woo! Xiaohua cried out excitedly. It ran over and bit those branches and leaves, then started to chew them. Mo Tiange saw that it could deal with them easily, so she didn't pay much attention to it. After all, Xiaohua was already in the 5th rank and was a mutated beast. Ordinary demonic beasts couldn't do anything to it, let alone these vines. Since it liked to eat them, she'd let it eat them. With this thought in mind, she took out a flying sword and, relying on her high cultivation level, uprooted some vines. She used her spiritual power to suppress them and sealed them in a jade box. She originally planned to wait for Xiaohua to eat enough before entering the virtual sky world to rest. Who would have thought that this little guy seemed to be addicted to eating and wouldn't leave? Mo Tiange thought about it. There weren't any high-rank sea beasts in the vicinity, so she might as well let it go. She found a place to lay a defensive formation and rest while she was at it, continuing to study Mo Yaoqing's route map. Mo Tiange took out the jade slip and the sea map Wei Haolan gave her, then carefully compared the two. In terms of meticulousness, Mo Yaoqing's map was naturally better. She carefully recorded the route she took that year. She clearly remembered which places had islands to refer to and what kind of demonic beasts there were. However, the sea map Wei Haolan gave her might be more accurate. After all, Mo Yaoqing was a person from 5,000 years ago. 5,000 years had passed, and some things had definitely changed. The small island might disappear, but another island might appear, and the demonic beasts might have migrated. According to Mo Yaoqing's notes, if she flew southeast from this small island, there would be a big island. However, according to Wei Haolan's sea map, there was no big island there. Mo Tiange frowned. Which one was right in the end? Chapter 330. After thinking for a while, Mo Tiange shook her head and threw this question to the back of her mind. She just needed to see which one was correct. Anyway, that was the only way. Just as she was about to put away the jade slip and adjust her breath, she suddenly felt Xiaohua's spiritual aura fluctuation. She quickly turned around and saw Xiaohua running further and further away from her. At this moment, Xiaohua was fighting with a very thick vine. Logically speaking, Xiaohua was already a 5th-rank spiritual beast. Even if this vine had demonic energy, it was still a plant. Especially after Xiaohua had mutated and possessed the sun-real fire, ordinary demonic beasts shouldn't be able to defeat it. However, for some reason, this vine wasn't afraid of the sun-real fire at all. It only dodged slightly, and then swept towards Xiaohua ferociously. Realizing the situation was bad, Mo Tiange stood up. Xiaohua. Upon hearing her voice, Xiaohua spouted sun-real fire, forcing the vine to retreat, then turned around and ran back to her. Mo Tiange waved her hand. A white light flashed, and the heaven and earth fan appeared in her hand. She then carefully walked towards the vine. This vine was very thick, several times thicker than the ones he had seen before. At first glance, it was impossible to find its roots. The branches and leaves were lush and entrenched, layer upon layer, like a towering tree. Sun real fire was an excellent fire for concocting pills and refining tools. It could melt many hard things. This vine was just a plant with spiritual aura that ate demonic beasts, so why wasn't it afraid? She thought for a while, then took out her flying sword to cut the vine's leaves. Before the flying sword arrived, the vine had already moved. Its branches danced in the air, trying to avoid the sword. Mo Tiange shook her sleeves and pushed her spiritual aura. The flying sword stabbed straight. This time, it hit the target, but it only left a shallow sword mark on the vine. Mo Tiange frowned slightly. She wasn't good at flying swords, but this flying sword was a magic weapon given to her by Lord Daoist Jinghe. It was extremely sharp, but it actually couldn't cut it? Xiaohua, burn it with magic. Xiaohua obediently jumped forward and spouted sun real fire again. This time, the vine moved a bit more. Its leaves danced wildly and swept several strong winds, blocking the real fire. However, Mo Tiange still noticed that there were burn marks at the ends of the leaves. The true sun fire was still useful, but the effect was not that good. However, using the sun's true flame to force the vines back was not enough. Mo Tiange pondered for a moment and came up with an idea. She took out the stone sculpture puppet from her Qinquan bag. Ever since she got these two puppets, she rarely used them against her enemies. It was because she advanced too quickly. However, these two puppets were extremely strong and could be useful in certain situations. At this moment, she was instructing the two puppets to walk towards the vine. The vine seemed to have sensed the spiritual energy, and its branches wrapped around the puppets. The two puppets stopped and swung their swords together. With one slash, it only left two shallow wounds on the vines. Then, these soft vines wrapped around the two puppets. Xiaohua was a little anxious, so it let out woo-woo sounds. These two puppets had always accompanied it in the virtual sky world, so they already had feelings for each other. Mo Tiange smiled and comforted it. Don't worry. Although the stone sculpture dolls were incredibly strong and hard, the vines were also extremely tough and flexible, perfectly restraining them. It was impossible for them to cut the vines. However, this wasn't Mo Tiange's plan when she took out the puppets. The vines wrapped around the two mannequins until they were unable to move. Then, the vines flung them backwards. At this time, Mo Tiange saw that there was a huge pocket between the tangled branches and leaves behind the vines, which looked like a big mouth. When the vines rolled the puppets over, the big mouth opened, and the vines threw the puppets inside. The big mouth closed and began to wriggle as if it was swallowing something. Seeing this scene, Mo Tiange smiled slightly. She moved her divine sense, and the big pocket suddenly protruded. The vine's branches and leaves began to tremble as if they were in pain. Then, the trembling became more and more violent, and even the big pocket hidden deep in the back began to twist. All of a sudden, with a rip, a hole appeared in the big pocket. The stone sculpture puppet's stone sword came out from inside, and green liquid flowed out. Xiaohua, spell. Xiaohua jumped up and sprayed Sun's real flame. At the same time, Mo Tiange's flying sword slashed forward. While the vine's branches were resisting the sun's real flame, it flew in through the gap and stabbed the big pocket behind it. This time, the flying sword neatly went into the handle, and more green liquid flowed out. Then, the two stone sculpture puppets broke out of the big pocket. The big pocket was no longer a pocket, it was so tattered that it almost looked like a sieve. More and more green liquid flowed out from inside, and the vine's movements became slower and slower. In the end, they finally hung down and stopped moving. Xiaohua immediately cheered a few times, rushed up, and began to gnaw at the pocket. Mo Tiange also walked over and studied this special vine. If these vines were all monsters, this vine's cultivation level was obviously higher than the others. Even sun's real flame couldn't burn its branches. She thought for a moment, then used her flying sword to cut the branches. Although she couldn't cut them immediately, she continuously used her flying sword to cut them. In the end, she still cut 2 of them. At this time, Xiaohua had already eaten the big pocket. Looking at the green vines that were already lifeless, its black eyes turned, and it couldn't help but take a bite. This time, it almost bit its teeth to pieces. It jumped up with a woo sound, covered its mouth with its 2 front paws, and jumped around on the ground. Mo Tiange was amused by its actions and grabbed it. "Let's see if you're still greedy." Xiaohua covered its mouth for a long time before it blinked, put down its paws, and lowered its head pitifully. Mo Tiange stroked its head and said, "This thing is too hard. You can't chew it off. If you want to take it away, it'll take a long time. Let's wait until we come back." She only cut off 2 branches, but it took her so long. If she wanted to take all these things away, it would take her several days. The purpose of her trip was to find Mo Yaoqing's Immortal's Cave, so she'd better finish her business first. She took Xiaohua into the virtual sky world, rested for a while, then left the virtual sky world and continued on their journey. They flew southeast for another 2 days. The sea was vast, and there was no trace of an island. Mo Tiange searched for a long time, using the compass to check her position. Eventually, she confirmed that the sea map Wei Haolan gave her was correct. There was indeed no big island here. Maybe after 5,000 years, that big island had already disappeared in the boundless sea. Helpless, she could only continue to look for the next sign. Just like that, she flew and stopped, searching for several months. When she was tired, she went into the virtual sky world to rest and play with the 2 spiritual beasts. When she was full of energy, she came out and continued to fly. During this time, she took several wrong turns and encountered several demonic beasts in the sea. On Mo Yaoqing's map, several small islands had already disappeared. Towards the end, the sea chart Wei Haolan gave her also didn't have any records. Mo Yaoqing had no choice but to rely on the compass to correct the direction bit by bit and find the right path. A few months later, Mo Tiange began to feel anxious. Although she didn't need to look for an island to rest and her spiritual aura was always full, every day she flew, she always saw the boundless sea. She didn't even have anyone to talk to, so the mental pressure was getting bigger and bigger. In a place that never changed, it was easy for people to feel anxious, even if she was a cultivator. Just as she was about to reach her limit, her divine sense jumped and she finally sensed spiritual aura fluctuations in the distance. Upon discovering this, Mo Tiange was overjoyed. She had been going around the sea for several months and had almost gone crazy. If she continued like this, she could only give up temporarily and enter the virtual sky world to cultivate her mental state. Fortunately, she finally sensed it. According to Mo Yaoqing's map, this was the last place she had to look for. The spiritual aura fluctuations became stronger and stronger, and an island finally appeared in her line of sight. Mo Tiange was ecstatic. She was glad that this island didn't become one of the sunken islands. If it did, her trip would have been in vain. But at this time, she became more cautious because Mo Yaoqing clearly said in the jade slip that there were powerful formations and restrictions in the Immortal's Cave. She passed away in meditation. Mo Yaoqing was a genius. The part about formations in her notes gave Mo Tiange a lot of inspiration, not to mention the Immortal's Cave she personally set up. Even if she had the map in her hand, Mo Tiange didn't dare to take it lightly. When she got closer, Mo Tiange circled several times over the island. This was a small island with a circumference of about 5 miles. It was surrounded by clouds and faint spiritual aura, giving off a fairy-like aura. Mo Tiange could see that there should be a middle-level spirit vein on this island, but most of the spiritual aura was restrained and only a small amount of spiritual aura escaped. This kind of spiritual aura couldn't attract the attention of high-level demonic beasts, but some low-level sea beasts appeared around the island. The island was ring-shaped. The outermost layer was a beach, and the inner layer was a gradually raised small mountain. Looking down from above, in the blue sea, a layer of fine white sand surrounded a piece of green, looking very beautiful. On the highest mountain in the middle, Mo found traces of formations, which were consistent with the records in Mo Yaoqing's jade slip. After confirming she was in the right place, Mo spread her hand and the white silk handkerchief flew out, turning into a thin mist that surrounded her. Then she held the heaven and earth fan tightly and slowly descended. Although she found the place, it was hard to say whether it was dangerous or not. After all, 5,000 years had passed, so it was normal to have some changes in the middle. When she finally stepped on the ground, Mo spread her divine sense first. Except for the location of the Immortal's Cave mentioned by Mo Yaoqing, there was no danger in other places. She felt a little relieved and walked towards the Immortal's Cave. Mo Yaoqing said there was a 7 extremes formation she created outside the Immortal's Cave. She didn't explain how to break this formation in the jade slip, which could be regarded as a test for future generations. Coincidentally, Mo had obtained her personal notes, which contained sporadic records about this 7 extremes formation. Coupled with her own attainments in formations, she had a certain degree of confidence in breaking this formation. The so-called 7 extremes formation was actually the 5 elements and yin and yang. Each extreme was a test, and this formation was composed of 7 tests. Mo Yaoqing called this formation 7 extremes because she was proud of herself. She thought she had reached the pinnacle of combining the 5 elements and yin and yang in her cultivation realm, so she named it 7 extremes. In this formation, the 5 elements suddenly changed. Sometimes they restrained each other, and sometimes they promoted each other. It seemed to be metal, but it could also be water or fire. Yin and yang were mixed up, and it would be difficult to distinguish whether it was yin or yang unless one was extremely proficient in formations. Therefore, the secret to breaking this formation was actually one word: divide. As long as the division was clear, this formation would be easy to break. Chapter 331. Mo didn't enter the formation immediately. She already had an idea on how to break this 7 extremes formation and had been preparing for months. At this time, she directed the 2 stone sculpture puppets to enter the formation and triggered the formation one by sensing it with her divine sense. These 2 puppets weren't living creatures, and their materials were very special, so they wouldn't be affected by this formation at all. Mo manipulated them with her divine sense and could clearly feel the changes in the formation. She manipulated them very carefully. Every time she found a suspicious point, she repeatedly used the puppets to test it until she figured out the changes of the 5 elements and yin. This process took a full 2 days. This 7 extremes formation was really too big and too complicated. 2 days later, Mo let the 2 stone sculpture puppets come out of the 7 extremes formation. She had roughly figured out the changes of the 5 elements and yin in this 7 extremes formation, and she already had a way to deal with it. She still didn't enter the 7 extremes formation. Instead, she directly entered the virtual sky world and began to refine a magic weapon. She was still very clumsy about refining tools, but this time, she wasn't going to refine an ordinary magic weapon, but a formation tool. Formations and magic weapons were originally completely different fields, but under special circumstances, they could also be interconnected. Mo was very familiar with making formation tools. Even if she wasn't good at refining tools, the probability of refining it into a magic weapon wouldn't be too low. She got the inspiration for this method of breaking formations from Qin Shi. Qin Shi had a magic weapon called the peak positioning lamp, which had a miraculous effect on breaking restrictions. Restrictions and formations were interconnected. Although it wasn't very common to use a magic weapon to break formations, it wasn't impossible. Of course, magic weapons used to break formations were very rare. For one thing, different formations required different methods of breaking formations. For another, such a magic weapon required the maker's attainments in formations to be too high. Formation masters were very rare in the cultivation world today. Most of the people who were good at formations were nascent soul cultivators who had a long life and were bored. However, their cultivation levels were superb, so they could completely break formations on the spot. Few people were bored enough to make a magic weapon to break formations. The reason why Mo Tiange wanted to make this magic weapon was that this 7 extremes formation was too powerful. Mo Yaoqing hid the jade slip so deeply that only nascent soul cultivators could see it, but she was only in the core formation realm now. Just now, after using the stone sculpture puppets to test the formation, he understood that if he were to personally enter the formation to break it, he would inevitably suffer some injuries. Thus, it was better to use a safer method. Another month passed as the refinement continued. The way of formations, to put it bluntly, was the understanding of the 5 elements, yin and yang, as well as precise calculations. This 7 extremes formation was Mo Yaoqing's proud work. It contained a huge amount of data, so calculating it was a very tiring thing. If she hadn't read Mo Yaoqing's notes, Mo Tiange admitted that even if she had completely comprehended the Xuanji formation book, it would have taken her at least several months to completely deduce the 7 extremes formation. But in Mo Yaoqing's notes, there were fragmentary records of this formation, so she spent a month to comprehend the data of this formation. As long as the data of the 5 elements and yin and yang were clear, it would be a simple matter to create a tool to break the formation. After a few more days, the formation-breaking magic treasure was finally completed. Mo Tiange called this magic treasure the star positioning compass. It was similar to a compass, but it was more sensitive to yin and yang and the 5 elements. After the star positioning compass was completed, Mo Tiange rested in the virtual sky world for a day. Then she came out of the virtual sky world full of energy and faced the 7 extremes formation again. This time, the 2 stone sculpture puppets were still the first to enter. After the 2 puppets entered the formation, the 7 extremes formation suddenly burst into dazzling light. 5 colors of gold, cyan, blue, red, and yellow appeared, and black shadows and white lights kept flashing. At the same time, the moment the 7 extremes formation was activated, the spiritual aura on the whole island became chaotic. When the formation was completely triggered, Mo Tiange calmly took out the star positioning compass. The star positioning compass flew into the 7 extremes formation and emitted a sparkling white light. Under this white light, the surrounding 5 elements slowly stabilized. Of course, the 7 extremes formation wasn't so easy to break. After discovering this force, the 5 elements around the star positioning compass twisted and immediately changed into another combination of 5 elements. The star positioning compass continued to emit white light, combing the surrounding 5 elements one by one. At this time, Mo Tiange had laid a small spirit gathering formation outside the formation, sat down cross-legged, and operated the Taiyuan record. With the Yang spiritual aura, a complete origin had been formed in her body, so it wouldn't be a big problem for her to directly practice the Taiyuan record. The star positioning compass could comb the 5 elements, but there was a simpler way to stabilize yin and yang, which was to use the Taiyuan record to drive the yin and yang spiritual aura around her to form a origin. In this way, yin and yang would be under her control, and it would no longer be chaotic. Time passed bit by bit. No matter how the 7 extremes formation changed, the star positioning compass always emitted a stable white light, reversing the surrounding 5 elements. The 2 poles of yin and yang, driven by Mo Tiange, had formed a cycle. After a stalemate, the 7 extremes formation gathered a huge force and rushed to the star positioning compass in the formation. With a solemn expression, Mo Tiange made a hand seal, gathered spiritual aura in her palm, and hit the star positioning compass. She used several high-grade spirit stones as the source of spiritual aura in this star positioning compass, but it was still not enough for the 7 extremes formation. This formation had existed here for so many years, but it could still operate. It should be like Wanderer's Ziwei, which directly used the spirit vein itself. Therefore, the formation wouldn't lose its effectiveness unless the spirit vein dissipated after a long time. But now was obviously not the time to lose its effectiveness. Its power might have weakened, but its power was still huge. Mo Tiange could only continuously transmit her spiritual aura to the star positioning compass, while she relied on the spirit gathering formation, spirit stones, and spirit recovering pills to restore her spiritual aura. This was a battle of spiritual aura. As long as she had enough spiritual aura, breaking the formation was only a matter of time. The spiritual power stalemate lasted for 3 full days. 3 days later, a loud explosion came from the 7 extremes formation. The star positioning compass suddenly absorbed a large amount of spiritual aura and exploded. At the same time, the power of the 7 extremes formation finally dissipated. Mo Tiange sat cross-legged on the ground for a long time. For 3 days, she had been continuously transmitting spiritual aura, so she was now extremely tired. After adjusting her breath for a long time, she finally recovered her spirit. She stood up, took back the puppet, walked into the broken 7 extremes formation, picked up the star positioning compass on the ground, and sighed. This star positioning compass used a lot of rare materials, but it was still destroyed. If she went inside to break the formation herself, she really didn't know how dangerous it would be. After passing through the broken 7 extremes formation, Mo Tiange saw a narrow entrance. This entrance seemed to be just a crack between the rocks. Through the crack, she could only see a very small valley with nothing else in sight. Mo Tiange took out the jade slip and compared it to the entrance. After confirming it was the right place, she walked in. She went straight into the depths of the valley. She cast an art and hit the mountain wall. The mountain wall opened with a sound, revealing a cave as tall as a person. She then stepped inside. The cave was very dark, almost without light. Presumably, even if there was a moonstone, it had lost its light after thousands of years. She took out a mother moonstone from her chinkuan bag, hung it around her waist, and slowly walked forward. The rest of the journey was very smooth. There were a few tests that Mo Yaoqing held back, but Mo Tiange was prepared in advance, so she passed them one by one. Finally, after walking through a stone path, the front suddenly opened up. Mo Tiange looked around. This was a ring-shaped valley, green grass, and the sun was shining brightly. She found it a bit unbelievable. When she came down from the sky, she didn't see this valley at all. It seemed to be hidden by a restriction, but she didn't find any trace of it. In that case, her smooth journey was simply because Mo Yaoqing didn't intend to make things difficult for later generations. Otherwise, she didn't know how long it would take her to find the entrance with this restriction alone. Although the valley was green and full of vitality, weeds were everywhere and had long been abandoned. Mo Tiange occasionally saw a few spiritual plants, but she didn't take them seriously. After all, the spiritual aura here wasn't good, and the spiritual plants were also very thin. Even if they were old, they were completely inferior to the virtual sky world. On the mountain wall surrounding the valley, there were several caves. Mo Tiange cautiously took out Mo Yaoqing's jade slip and carefully compared it. After understanding the purpose of these caves, she entered them one by one. These caves were nothing more than a cultivation room, a concocting room, a spiritual beast room, and so on. There was nothing in the spiritual beast room. When Mo Yaoqing passed away in meditation, she released her spiritual beasts. Mo Tiange entered the pill concocting room, tool refining room, and so on. She found several kinds of rare tools, so she picked 1 or 2 that she needed and put them into her chinkuan bag. The jade slips Mo Yaoqing left behind were for the descendants of the Mo family and for the disciples of Bishuan court. If she took all of them and some nascent soul disciples of Bishuan court came looking for them in the future, there would be nothing left. She wasn't greedy and didn't intend to cut off other people's escape routes. In the end, she entered the cultivation room. This cultivation room was narrow and winding, and there were messy things everywhere. There were all kinds of materials, books, jade slips, and some strange things whose uses she didn't know. Mo Tiange looked at them one by one, feeling a bit incredulous. It wasn't because these materials were rare, but because they were placed in such a messy way. With a Chinkuan bag, these things naturally didn't need to be piled up in the cave. The fact that they were piled up randomly like this could only mean one thing: Mo Yaoqing was very lazy. After she used them, she just threw them away and was too lazy to tidy them up. Mo Tiange sighed as she continued to walk inside. The Immortal's Cave left behind by Miss Yaoqing, who had a gentle voice and was said by Yuan Bao to be incomparably charming, was actually like this? This was a bit too. Just as this thought crossed her mind, she turned into the depths of the cultivation room. When she saw the innermost jade platform, she instantly became speechless, completely speechless. A woman was sitting on the jade platform. She was sitting cross-legged with a dignified bearing. Her eyes were closed, and her expression was calm. Her eyebrows were like distant mountains, her face was like the autumn moon, her skin was like snow, and her black hair was like clouds. She was just sitting there casually, but there wasn't a single part of her that wasn't beautiful. Ever since she set foot on the path to immortality, Mo Tiange had seen a lot of beautiful women. Even she herself, although she couldn't be said to be beautiful enough to captivate birds and beasts, she was still elegant and handsome. However, there had never been a woman who could make the words "devastatingly beautiful" involuntarily emerge in her heart. This woman's beauty was indeed something she had never seen in her life. After a long time, Mo Tiange finally regained her composure and heaved a sigh of relief. Although this woman was vivid and lifelike, just like a living person, Mo Tiange knew this was nothing more than a skeleton. Aside from Mo Yaoqing, there was naturally no one else but a skeleton sitting cross-legged in this cave. With this thought in mind, Mo Tiange felt it was inconceivable. Her ancestor, a female cultivator who lived more than 5,000 years ago, possessed a pure Yin constitution and was a world-shaking talent, was actually such an astonishingly beautiful woman? Chapter 332. In Mo Tiange's mind, Yuan Bao's description of her as the incomparably charming and charming Miss Yaoqing emerged. This kind of appearance was indeed worthy of the words incomparably charming and charming. Her demeanor was very dignified, and there was not a trace of frivolity on her face. However, one could not help but feel that there was a flirtatious feeling emanating from her bones. Mo Tiange couldn't help but wonder how beautiful she would be if she was still alive. With just a smile, all the men in the world would fall head over heels for her. Zhong Muling really took advantage of her. No wonder he wasn't angry even after being schemed against like that. After pondering for a moment, Mo Tiange brushed her robes and knelt down. Great Ancestor, this junior, Mo Tiange, received Great Ancestor's guidance when I was a child. You passed on the art of Sunu to me and I set foot on the path to immortality. Now that I have achieved some success in my immortal cultivation, I followed Great Ancestor's ruins to come here. I didn't expect to see Great Ancestor's remains. If I have offended you in any way, please forgive me. Then he respectfully kowtowed 3 times before standing up. The reason why Mo Yaoqing's corpse hadn't rotted even after 5,000 years was probably because she had some kind of treasure on her. Mo Tiange naturally wouldn't take it away. Not to mention that such an action would be too disrespectful to this ancestor, she was also reluctant to destroy such a beautiful body. After apologizing, Mo Tiange raised her head and looked around, searching for the things she needed. The ground was full of materials, but these weren't her goal. In terms of wealth, although she wasn't as good as a nascent soul cultivator like Mo Yaoqing, she still had a lot of treasures. Her most important purpose was to obtain the cultivation insights Mo Yaoqing left behind. After searching for a while among the miscellaneous items, he found that none of the books and jade slips that had been casually thrown around were of any value. However, there were also some extremely valuable secret records of cultivation methods among them. Mo Tiange picked them up then put them aside, preparing to make a copy to take with her. After searching for a while, Mo Tiange still couldn't find what she wanted. Mo Tiange was extremely puzzled. Mo Yaoqing's jade slip recorded it very clearly, so it was impossible that it didn't exist. On second thought, there were all kinds of materials piled up on the ground. There were no magic treasures or the like. Could it be that they were placed somewhere else? Mo Tiange searched the small and narrow cultivation room for a long time. She also checked Mo Yaoqing's jade slip to confirm that there wasn't anything like a treasure storing room here. A thought flashed through her mind, and she shifted her gaze to Mo Yaoqing. She had searched everywhere else except for this place. Great ancestor, please forgive this junior for offending you. After Mo Tiange cupped her hands again, she reached under the praying mat Mo Yaoqing was sitting on and fumbled around. Sure enough, she pulled out a Qingkuan bag from underneath. Delighted, she took the Qingkuan bag and put her hand inside. She was shocked again. There were too many treasures here. Looking at the materials piled up in the cultivation room, Mo Yaoqing's net worth was already extraordinary, but compared to the things in the Qingkuan bag, it was nothing. Mo Tiange took out these magic weapons and placed them on the ground one by one. There were actually about 20 to 30 of them. Moreover, these magic weapons were all high-grade magic weapons. Based on Mo Yaoqing's attainments in tool refining, the magic weapons she left in her Qingkuan bag and brought to the place of her death obviously weren't ordinary. Mo Tiange felt like she didn't know where to start. Her master, Lord Daoist Jinghe, had always been very generous to her. The magic weapons he bestowed her were also of excellent quality, but compared to Mo Yaoqing's magic weapons, they weren't good enough. It wasn't that Lord Daoist Jinghe's net worth was inferior to Mo Yaoqing's, but the magic weapons Lord Daoist Jinghe gave her were common magic weapons for juniors, while Mo Yaoqing's magic weapons were the trump cards of a nascent soul cultivator. The two of them originally couldn't be compared. She thought for a long time but still didn't know how to choose, so she simply put them aside and continued to search in her Qingkuan bag. As she searched, she found many jade slips. She injected her divine sense into them one by one, feeling ecstatic. She finally found them. Among these jade slips, there was a copy of Mo Yaoqing's cultivation experience, a copy of her life experience, and a copy for the juniors who found this place. Cultivator who came here, I don't know whether you're a descendant of the Mo family or a disciple of Bishuan court. If you're neither, being able to find this place and break my 7 extremes formation can be considered fate. You may take 1/5 of the treasures in this immortal's cave and choose 5 magic weapons in this Qingkuan bag. Remember, you can't be greedy. Otherwise, the restrictions in this immortal's cave will be activated in an instant and you'll be killed. After reading this message, Mo Tiange suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. With Mo Yaoqing's attainments and formations, she believed these words weren't empty words. The restrictions in this immortal's cave completely concealed this valley. If she just flew over it, she wouldn't be able to see any trace of it, so it was obvious how amazing these restrictions were. Fortunately, she wasn't greedy. If she impatiently put these materials into her Qingkuan bag right after she entered the immortal's cave, the restrictions might have been activated or she might have taken all these magic weapons as soon as she saw them. In that case, she would have become a skeleton by now. After calming herself down, she continued to read. The following was an introduction to these magic weapons. She looked at them carefully and compared them to the real objects, slowly choosing them. The first magic weapon she chose was called Spirit Guiding Bead. This bead couldn't be used directly in fights of magical power, but it could store spiritual aura and be used like a spirit stone during fights of magical power. The spiritual aura this bead could store was much more than a spirit stone. Because of the special effect of the art of the origin, Mo Tiange's spiritual aura consumption during fights of magical power was slightly less than that of ordinary cultivators. However, if she had this spirit guiding bead, she wouldn't need to worry about spiritual aura in fights of magical power in the future. The second one was called Tai Chi 8 Diagrams. This diagram was painted with Tai Chi 8 diagrams, which was all-encompassing and had the effect of automatically combing spiritual aura and stabilizing yin and yang. Its function was similar to the star positioning compass Mo Tiange refined before, but its effect was many times stronger. With this thing, it would be much easier to break the 7 extremes formation, and she wouldn't need to consume so much spiritual aura. The third one was the Lotus umbrella. This umbrella was very exquisite, and there were many budding pink lotuses painted on it. It could be seen that Mo Yaoqing was also a woman who loved beauty. Mo Yaoqing said that when this umbrella was opened, the poisonous and demonic aura around her would not be able to invade, and it would automatically attack the enemy. It was the best magic weapon when fighting against demonic creatures. The fourth one was called Spirit Cloud's Rui. This was an offensive magic weapon. The several magic weapons Mo Tiange chose before were all for auxiliary use in fights of magical power. Her Heaven and Earth fan was also more defensive than offensive, so she chose an offensive magic weapon this time. This magic weapon contained amazing spiritual aura. Once it was thrown out, it could cause the surrounding spiritual aura to explode, causing a great impact on the enemy. As for the last one, she thought for a long time and finally decided on a teleportation magic weapon, the Land Shrinking Ruler. When she escaped from Mount Yunwu, Qin Shi gave her a magic tool he stole from Yunwu sect, the Land Fleeing Ruler. In the foundation building realm, this magic tool was a good tool for escaping, but after she formed her gold core, when fighting against people, the enemy's divine sense and speed were many times stronger than those in the foundation building realm, so this magic tool wasn't so effective anymore. Now that she obtained this Land Shrinking Ruler, not only could she teleport, but it could also increase her speed. When used together with her cloud-treading boots, it was a good tool for escaping. She no longer put all her hopes on the virtual sky world. Ren Yufeng's experience made her realize that her virtual sky world would occasionally fail. Moreover, it would take several breaths of time to enter the virtual sky world. In fights of magical power between high-level cultivators, several breaths of time could often determine life and death. After she finished choosing her magic weapon, Mo Tiange copied all of Mo Yaoqing's books and jade slips, regardless of whether they were useful or not, then put them into her Qinkuan bag. Although Mo Tiange said she couldn't take 1/5 of the books, she only copied them and didn't take the original ones. That shouldn't be too much, right? As for the materials piled on the ground, she chose some rare ones. Fortunately, she also had a lot of materials on her, so she didn't need to worry too much. After she finished collecting them, Mo Tiange put the remaining magic weapons and jade slips back into Mo Yaoqing's Qinkuan bag and put them under the praying mat, returning them to their original appearance. This way, if Bishuan court disciples came looking for them in the future, they'd also have to go through the same test. After doing all this, Mo Tiange once again knelt in front of Mo Yaoqing's corpse. Junior Mo Tiange is extremely grateful for great ancestors' gift. I hereby kowtow to express my gratitude. After kowtowing, she carefully withdrew from Mo Yaoqing's cultivation room. But just as he exited the room, a restriction suddenly appeared at the entrance of the cultivation chamber, sealing it. Mo Tiange was stunned, but she soon realized that the 7 extremes formation outside must have been broken, so the restriction on this cultivation room must have been temporarily removed. When she withdrew from the cultivation room, the restriction automatically restored itself. She was both shocked and regretful. She was shocked because she knew a lot about the Tao of formations. She knew that it wasn't difficult to set up a powerful formation, but it was quite difficult to make it automatically restore itself after it was broken. In that case, the so-called breaking of the formation was nothing but a test for the junior. Mo Yaoqing's attainments in formations were actually far superior to hers. Fortunately, she copied all of Mo Yaoqing's jade slips and books. If she studied them slowly, she should be able to learn the secrets of formations. She regretted that she didn't plan to leave the island immediately. The reason why she withdrew from the cultivation room was because she felt it was a bit disrespectful for her to study Mo Yaoqing's corpse inside. She didn't expect that by retreating, she would tacitly admit that she'd already made her choice, so the restriction was restored again. If she wanted to enter again, she would have to break the formation again. However, if she tried to break the formation again, it would take a lot of effort even if she had the Tai Chi 8 diagrams now. Her main purpose had been achieved, and there was nothing else she needed to take, so she didn't need to waste her effort. Mo Tiange sighed at the restriction at the entrance of the cultivation room and decided to forget about it. Even if there was something she hadn't chosen, it was just some materials, which she wasn't in urgent need of. With that thought, she sat cross-legged in the valley outside the cultivation room and began to study the jade slips she'd just obtained. The first thing she took was Imo Yaoqing's life record. After injecting her divine sense into it, the following information appeared in her mind. My name is Imo Yaoqing. I'm a cultivator from Yunzhong. Because I have a pure Yin constitution and double spiritual roots, I entered the Danxia sect of the righteous path when I was a child and worshipped Master Daoist Qixia as my master. Then she recorded some of her experiences in the sect in detail. The more Imo Tiange read, the more surprised she became. According to Imo Yaoqing, Yunzhong was completely different from the celestial pole. In the cultivation world of the celestial pole, aside from Daoist cultivators, there were only a few Confucian cultivators. The Devil Path was suppressed in the small area north of extraterrestrial Devil after the Great War between the Righteous and Devil Path, and the Devil Path cultivators were only active in the forest south of Kunwu. In Yunzhong, however, the cultivators of Daoist, Devil, Buddhist, Confucian, and Devil Path cultivators all lived together. Although Daoist cultivators also occupied an absolute advantage, the various Taoists occasionally had disputes, but usually, they lived in harmony. Yunzhong was extremely large and had many spirit veins, unlike the celestial pole, which basically had all spirit veins in Kunwu. Therefore, there were also many more cultivators in Yunzhong than in the celestial pole. Chapter 333. Yunzhong was located in the south of the celestial pole. After crossing Kunwu Mountain, the southern forest, and the South Sea, one would arrive in Yunzhong. Because there were many demonic beasts in the southern forest and the East Sea was separated by demonic mountain, few cultivators in the celestial pole knew about the situation in Yunzhong. Even those who were knowledgeable only knew that there was a piece of land south of the sea. Over time, people in the celestial pole just called it Shannon, meaning south of Kunwu Mountain. Although Yunzhong and the celestial pole were only separated by the South Sea, only a few cultivators could reach the other land since ancient times. There were countless high-level sea beasts in the South Sea, and it was said that 8th or 9th rank sea beasts were not uncommon. Sea beasts above the 5th rank could generally fly. 8th or 9th rank sea beasts were equivalent to human cultivators in the early or middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Once one was entangled by these high-level sea beasts in the sea, even a nascent soul cultivator would find it difficult to escape. In addition, the weather in the South Sea was unpredictable, and gales and tsunamis were common, which added a lot of variables to crossing the South Sea. According to Imo Yaoqing, Yunzhong was a bit bigger than the celestial pole. Most importantly, it had a lot of spirit veins distributed everywhere, so there were also a lot of cultivators. In Yunzhong, cultivation was a very common thing, and mortals were also very enthusiastic about it, although most of them could only cultivate a little spiritual aura and couldn't even reach the first layer of the aura refining realm. This was different from the celestial pole. In the celestial pole, because Kunwu Mountain had the largest spirit veins, there were only some weak spirit veins in the secular world, so 80% of cultivators gathered in Kunwu Mountain. Most mortals in the secular world only heard about the legends of immortals and didn't know much about cultivation. Because of the prevalence of cultivation, there were a lot of high-level cultivators in Yunzhong. Ordinary small cultivation groups had 1 or 2 nascent soul cultivators, and big cultivation groups even had more than 10 nascent soul cultivators. Seeing this, Imo Tiange was very surprised. Tiandao's sect was the biggest cultivation group in the celestial pole, but in its heyday, it usually only had 6 or 7 nascent soul cultivators and never had more than 10. If there were more than 10 nascent soul cultivators, the sect should have tens of thousands of disciples, which was quite incredible for the celestial pole. Yunzhong's cultivation resources were also very rich because Yunzhong was accessible in all directions. In the south was the returning Ruan Sea, in the east was the Yuanzhou continent, and in the west was Shaoyang. Except for the celestial pole in the north, which was too dangerous to set foot in due to the sea, Yunzhong had connections with all the nearby continents. This scene greatly broadened Imo Tiange's horizons. Living in the celestial pole, she thought other places were like the celestial pole, where it was difficult to communicate with the outside world, but it turned out that there were places like Yunzhong that were accessible from all directions and could come and go at will. The sect Mo Yaoqing entered was called Danxia sect, and it was also a Dao cultivation sect. Even in Yunzhong, cultivators were the most numerous among all kinds of cultivators. They, along with Buddhist and Confucian cultivators, were known as the righteous path. Danxia sect could also be considered a big sect in Yunzhong. When Mo Yaoqing was there were 9 nascent soul cultivators, more than 80 core formation cultivators, and 10,000 disciples. After describing the general situation in Yunzhong, Mo Yaoqing began to record what she had experienced one by one. As Mo Tiange read, she sighed with emotion. For female cultivators, being too beautiful wasn't a good thing. Mo Yaoqing's spiritual roots weren't bad, and coupled with her pure Yin constitution, she became a disciple of Master Daoist Qixia, a nascent soul cultivator. In Yunzhong, titles were very casual, unlike in the celestial pole, where core formation cultivators were called Master Daoist and nascent soul cultivators were called Lord Daoist. Master Daoist Qixia was also a female cultivator. After she accepted Mo Yaoqing as her disciple, she valued her very much. Therefore, for more than 100 years, Mo Yaoqing had always been a proud daughter of heaven. She had excellent qualifications, a high status, and a beautiful appearance. Not to mention in Danxia sect, she was also famous in the entire righteous path. Some people even gave her a nickname, Yaotai Fairy. However, Mo Yaoqing was dismissive of this reputation. Under the reputation of Yaotai Fairy, no one saw her exceptional intelligence. She comprehended spells very quickly and had a unique understanding of Daoist scriptures. She could often modify some spells to make them more powerful. She even had good talents in pill concocting, tool refining, formations, and talisman making. However, what others saw was only the fairy of the Yaotai Pavilion's stunning beauty and decent aptitude. Many young cultivators fell in love with her, and among them, there was no lack of high-level cultivators who wanted to marry her and become dual cultivation partners. But to Mo Yaoqing, these only added to her troubles. Because she was beautiful and looked around, many cultivators thought they were in love with her. If they talked to her or saw her smile, they would think she had feelings for them, so they would come to pester her. If she didn't pretend to be nice to them, those male cultivators would think she seduced them first and then turned her back on them later. Because of this, Yaotai Fairy's reputation became worse and worse. There were always people who said she played with people's feelings and acted unrestrained. Over time, Mo Yaoqing couldn't stand being annoyed and hated male cultivators even more. She put all her heart and soul into cultivating and didn't leave her immortal's cave. Only then did the rumors gradually die down. Mo Tiange felt it was unfair for her. She had seen Mo Yaoqing's body. She looked dignified and serious, but she still gave people a feeling of infinite charm. Mo Yaoqing's description shouldn't be exaggerated. Even if she didn't mean it, people always thought she deliberately seduced them. With the appearance of a fairy and the charm of a seductress, it would be strange if those male cultivators didn't go crazy for her. Mo Yaoqing was actually quite proud of herself. Her qualifications were good, but her wisdom was amazing. Her understanding of spells was unique, and cultivators in the same realm often couldn't compare to her. However, these cultivators who were inferior to her always said she played with people's feelings and was fickle, which made Mo Yaoqing feel even more disgusted. In her mind, these cultivators were as stupid as pigs and loved to stir up trouble. They weren't worthy of her even a second glance. Mo Tiange stared at the contempt in Mo Yaoqing's words and thought to herself, no wonder Mo Yaoqing never fell in love with any man in her life. Even Zhong Muling, who's fated to be her husband, only had a good impression of her. Her wariness towards men is really deep-rooted. Mo Yaoqing formed her gold core when she was more than 100 years old. She originally thought those rumors should be far away from her. After all, after advancing to the core formation realm, one would be a high-level cultivator. Who would dare to talk about high-level cultivators? Who would have thought that her big crisis would come at this time? Her master naturally wouldn't tell anyone about her pure Yin constitution. Aside from several nascent soul martial uncles and the disciple who led her into the sect, no one else knew about it. Mo Yao Qing had always been against male cultivators, so she never thought about dual cultivation. She had long forgotten about her pure Yin constitution. But right at this time, the head Grand Supreme Elder of the sect suggested to her that she should perform dual cultivation with his blood-related junior. This Grand Supreme Elder's blood-related junior was also a core formation cultivator, so her aptitude wasn't bad. However, Mo Yao Qing was a prideful person. She despised male cultivators very much, so how could she agree? Seeing that she didn't comply, the Grand Supreme Elder didn't force her at first. Instead, he let her master try to persuade her. Mo Yao Qing recorded, "I'm indebted to master, and I also understand her suffering. However, it's absolutely impossible for me to perform dual cultivation with someone else. Most men in this world have lust in their hearts, but they don't dare to admit it and can only push the blame onto women. It's hateful that I didn't understand what a pure Yin constitution means until now." Unable to persuade her, the Grand Supreme Elder gradually lost his patience. Mo Yao Qing noticed this, so she pretended to be unwilling and made many requests to the Grand Supreme Elder. Seeing that she was willing to give in, the Grand Supreme Elder was delighted and agreed to all of her requests. Then, taking advantage of their momentary negligence, Mo Yao Qing escaped from Danxia sect. In any case, Danxia sect was a big sect on the righteous path, and Mo Yao Qing had just advanced to the core formation realm not long ago. How could she escape from Danxia sect's pursuit? Mo Yao Qing made up her mind and actually abolished her cultivation level, changed her appearance, and hid in the secular world. In Yunzhong, even mortals like to cultivate, so there were many people like her who had a little bit of spiritual aura. Hiding in the secular world like this made it easier for them to avoid being caught. Mo Yao Qing's move of throwing herself into a dead end succeeded. She evaded Danxia sect's pursuit and successfully left Danxia sect's sphere of influence. Then, she found a small place, hid, and started to cultivate again. Seeing this, Mo Tiange was extremely shocked. It was true that cultivation level could be abolished, but what kind of willpower did that require? This almost completely destroyed her dantian and meridians. If she didn't have enough willpower, she would probably die from the pain. Besides, Mo Yao Qing abolished her cultivation level on her own. How many people in this world would be willing to abolish the cultivation level they had painstakingly cultivated? To cultivate again, it might be twice or even 10 times more difficult than before. But in the Jade Slip, Mo Yao Qing only downplayed this experience. At this point, Mo Tiange already admired this ancestor from the bottom of her heart. She thought she was already doing well among female cultivators, but compared to Mo Yao Qing, she was still not good enough. Although she lost her cultivation level, Mo Yao Qing still had her family treasures. She was a nascent soul cultivator's disciple in Danxia sect, so she had a lot of offerings. Moreover, before she escaped, she also asked the Grand Supreme Elder for a lot of treasures, which she took with her. Relying on these treasures and spirit stones, Mo Yao Qing turned into an individual cultivator and hid in the secular world. She slowly nurtured her dantian and meridians, then she started to cultivate again. Little by little, she built her foundation, formed her gold core. Even though her mental state was already strong enough, it still took her 200 years to recultivate to the core formation realm. This time, she was very cautious and cultivated her breath-concealing technique to a very high level before she went out. She didn't dare to show her original face, so she usually put makeup on her face and dressed up in a tacky and seductive way. Her personality was originally very firm. After experiencing being forced to perform dual cultivation, she became even more ruthless. Anyone who offended her was killed without exception. If there was anyone who didn't have eyes and coveted her, she would use a secret technique to absorb their cultivation level. Over time, because she often used a magic weapon called the soul-frightening bell, she was called the Golden Bell Witch. Relying on her good aptitude and intelligence, Mo Yao Qing cultivated to the peak stage of the core formation realm and began to attack the nascent soul realm. However, because her cultivation level was once crippled, her dantian and meridians were weaker than ordinary people's, so it was very difficult for her to attack the nascent soul realm. But at that time, she was no longer young. If she delayed, her chances of advancing to the nascent soul realm would slowly decrease. Mo Yaoqing hated Danxia sect to the bone. She once swore to take revenge on that Grand Supreme Elder and his descendants, so how could she be willing to die like this? Right at that time, she met Zhong Muling and discovered his spiritual roots of the origin. Chapter 334. Mo Yaoqing was a proud person. She didn't want to perform dual cultivation with others because of her self-esteem, not because of her so-called chastity. Her growing age and the increasing number of enemies forced her to make a decision. She was decisive and did what she had to, so she quickly made a decision. In any case, she didn't value chastity, and Zhong Muling was someone she had a good impression of, so why not? Thus, she plotted against Zhong Muling and used the plucking technique to rush into the nascent soul realm in one fell swoop. After she entered the nascent soul realm, Mo Yaoqing went to Danxia sect to cause trouble. She was alone, so she naturally couldn't oppose the entire Danxia sect, so she secretly killed many descendants of that Grand Supreme Elder. This method was indeed a bit ruthless, but Mo Tiange only sighed when she thought of her previous experience. With Mo Yaoqing's qualifications, she formed her gold core when she was 100 years old. If her cultivation went smoothly, she would probably form her nascent soul when she was 300 years old. However, she spent 200 years and suffered unspeakable hardships. If she wasn't smart enough back then, she probably wouldn't have been able to escape the fate of being forced. Of course, Danxia sect still had cultivators in the late stage of the nascent soul realm. Mo Yaoqing, who had just formed her nascent soul, couldn't afford to offend any of them. Moreover, she had many other enemies. Therefore, after venting her anger, Mo Yaoqing made a prompt decision to flee far away. Later, due to a strange combination of factors, she arrived in the Celestial Pole. When she arrived in the Celestial Pole, she settled in Linhai town on the coast of the Eastern Sea. Mo Tiange knew what happened next. She established Bishuan court and temporarily took shelter in Linhai. However, right at that moment, she discovered she was pregnant. By that time, 5 years had passed since she and Zhong Muling became husband and wife. According to common sense, if a woman was pregnant, she would give birth after 10 months of pregnancy. However, Mo Yaoqing was a cultivator, so there was a very small chance of a hidden fetus. The so-called hidden fetus was when the fetus was wrapped in spiritual aura before it developed, so there were no signs of pregnancy. After Mo Yaoqing and Zhong Muling became husband and wife, she entered closed-door meditation to form her nascent soul. During soul formation, spiritual aura intertwined, so the possibility of this happening was very high. Because of this, Zhong Muling never knew about this child. It wasn't until many years later that he discovered Mo Yaoqing left him a bloodline. In the end, Mo Yaoqing couldn't bear to part with this child. In consideration of his father, Zhong Muling, who was a kind person, she finally decided to give birth to this child. Unfortunately, although this child had 2 nascent soul cultivators as his parents, he didn't have spiritual roots. Mo Yaoqing had no choice but to go to the secular world. She pretended to be a mortal for several decades and raised this child. It was only after the child grew up, married, and had children that Mo Yaoqing pretended to die of old age, escaped, and returned to Linhai. After reading up to this point, Mo Tiange had a different view of this ancestor. Apart from having a firm and decisive personality, she was also a woman and a mother. Many cultivators disdain children without spiritual roots, but she was willing to pretend to be immortal for decades for this child. From this account, Mo Tiange could sense the sorrow revealed between the lines. She had been pregnant for several years and gave birth to a child who was connected to her flesh and blood. However, he didn't have a spiritual root, so she could only watch him grow old and die of illness. Therefore, she would rather leave the child in the secular world and cut off their relationship. Giving birth was a cruel thing for cultivators. Even if both parents were nascent soul cultivators, there was no guarantee that their children would have spiritual roots. She couldn't help but think of herself. After she and she became husband and wife, neither of them mentioned this problem. She vaguely thought about it, but she didn't think too much about it. Compared to mortals, it was harder for cultivators to get pregnant. Only now did she realize how cruel this problem was. She and she were both people with firm Tao hearts. Ascetic cultivators weren't suitable to have children, let alone such a problem. What if he didn't have spiritual roots? How cruel would it be if he learned about the cultivation world but didn't have the fate to cultivate? She could only leave him in the secular world, but it would be difficult to continue their relationship. After thinking for a while, Mo Tiange sighed and threw this problem to the back of her mind. Since it wasn't suitable, it was better not to. In any case, she was in closed-door meditation and wouldn't come out for at least 10 or 20 years. After returning to Linhai, Mo Yaoqing continued to cultivate. Although the celestial pole was smaller than Yunzhong, there were so many cultivators in Kunwu that it was no less prosperous than Yunzhong. In such an environment, she lived in seclusion in Linhai without enemies and smoothly advanced to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. During this period, she also returned to Yunzhong. Relying on her many magic weapons and powerful strength, she wanted to take revenge, but she found that the Grand Supreme Elder who forced her in the past had already passed away. When she learned this news, Mo Yaoqing was stunned for a long time. In the end, she sighed and let go of her hatred. It wasn't until now that she saw through it. No matter what kind of hatred, it couldn't overcome time. Nascent soul cultivators had a lifespan of more than 1,000 years, but so what? One day, they would fall and pass away. At that time, they would be nothing more than a pile of dirt. After returning to the celestial pole, Mo Yaoqing concentrated on cultivating, but she couldn't make a realm breakthrough again. The sequelae of having her cultivation abolished were very serious. She couldn't overcome that hurdle and wasted hundreds of years in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. In the end, she couldn't advance to the late stage and finally passed away in the celestial pole. Before passing away, Mo Yaoqing recorded her life and looked back on her life. She fought against fate all her life until the end without any regrets. Mo Tiange put down the jade slip and sat for a long time. Then she exhaled and looked up at the sky. A day had passed, and the sky was full of rosy clouds. Soon, night would fall, but so what? There were still beautiful stars in the sky and dawn to look forward to. She smiled, put away Mo Yaoqing's jade slip and sat cross-legged in meditation. Although she didn't have Mo Yaoqing's astonishing wisdom, she had luck that she didn't have. She met a master who treated her sincerely and had a lover who was in love with her. Although she also lost something, she gained more. As soon as she entered meditation, her state of mind easily entered a peaceful and empty state. The world seemed to merge into one, becoming ethereal and tranquil. The origin inside her body began to operate. The 5 elements generated each other, yin and yang circulated, growing and multiplying endlessly. Mo Tiange felt that she had entered a very mysterious state. She had never experienced this state before. She felt that her whole body had melted into it and gradually, she didn't have herself anymore. The wind was blowing, she could smell the fragrance of flowers and plants, and she could hear the sound of waves. She seemed to have fallen asleep and woke up again. When she opened her eyes again, it was still night. Mo Tiange didn't know how long she had been cultivating, but she felt refreshed and full of energy. She operated her spiritual aura and felt that there was something unusual in her dantian, as if it was ready to move. She felt that she really wanted to continue cultivating, to let the spiritual aura operate, to absorb spiritual aura from the outside, and to let it flow through her meridians to her dantian. Her cultivation level was now at the peak of the early stage of the core formation realm. She had stopped absorbing spiritual aura for some time, and during this period of time, she only cultivated in meditation. Could it be that her body wanted to advance? Thinking of this, she felt happy. She was only a dozen years away from successfully forming her gold core, so she didn't expect to advance so soon. She was talented and didn't lack medicinal pills, so her cultivation level increased quickly. However, because of this, the cultivation of her state of mind would be delayed. She often had to stay at the peak of a certain stage for a while before she could make a breakthrough. Just like when she was building her foundation, she deliberately suppressed her cultivation speed for a long time to let her state of mind keep up with her cultivation level. She didn't expect that this time, she could advance so quickly. In just a dozen years, she could already advance. Thinking about it carefully, perhaps it had something to do with her reading Mo Yaoqing's life records? Mo Yaoqing remembered everything in detail. During that half a day, she followed Mo Yaoqing in the jade slip, experiencing happiness, sadness, and anger. It was almost equivalent to experiencing Mo Yaoqing's life. During this process, she experienced a lot and also comprehended a lot. Perhaps it was because of this that her state of mind advanced by leaps and bounds, giving her the impulse to advance. Logically speaking, if she wanted to advance, she should enter the virtual sky world. But for some reason, she suddenly wanted to sit here and feel everything Mo Yaoqing had experienced. She did as she said. Mo Tiange laid a simple defensive spirit-gathering formation around her, took out several kinds of medicinal pills, sat cross-legged, and began to enter closed-door meditation on the spot. Advancing to a small realm like this was much easier than advancing to the foundation building and core formation realms. Moreover, she was in the depths of the uninhabited Eastern Sea, so Mo Tiange only took a clear sky pill and a constitution-enhancing pill, then closed her eyes and began to absorb spiritual aura. The sun rose and the moon set. The tides rose and fell. Amidst the sound of the waves, time passed day by day. Listening to the rise and fall of the waves, Mo Tiange felt as if she had returned to 5,000 years ago, to the era where that proud and determined woman lived. Nothing was eternal, only time. Mortals would grow old and die, and cultivators would advance and fall. With the passage of time, even the most amazing genius would eventually be submerged in time. They would be covered by the desolate smoke creepers and disappear without a trace. Unless one cultivated to become a true immortal and jumped out of samsara. Only then could one grasp time, grasp eternity, become one with heaven and earth, and never be annihilated. *****. 4 months later, Mo Tiange opened her eyes. She looked down at herself. Nothing had changed, but the abundance of spiritual aura in her body was far more abundant than before she entered closed-door meditation. In the past 4 months, she had successfully advanced to the middle stage of the core formation realm. Thinking of this, she smiled slightly. Although she didn't advance to the core formation realm earlier than Qin Shi, she advanced to the middle stage of the core formation realm at a younger age than him. She remembered Qin Shi said he went to Demonic Mountain not long after he advanced to the middle stage of the core formation realm. At that time, he was already 116 years old. It wasn't that she wanted to compete with Qin Shi, but the gap between their cultivation levels was too big. She needed to catch up to him as soon as possible so they could advance side by side. Thinking of Qin Shi, Mo Tiange's thoughts drifted far away. It had been half a year since she left Xianqing school. After being separated for half a year, she really missed him a bit. She didn't know how he was now. If he knew she advanced to the middle stage of the core formation realm, he would definitely be very happy, right? Maybe. I should go back. She muttered to herself. Although Qin Shi would still be in closed-door meditation when she went back, she could still see him occasionally. After thinking for a while, she shook her head again. This wouldn't do. How many closed-door meditation did a cultivator have to go through in their 1,000+ years of life? It was only half a year. If she kept thinking about him, how could she concentrate on her closed-door meditation? He could do it, so she should also do it. But what should she do next? She found Mo Yaoqing's Immortal's Cave and achieved her goal. If she followed her original plan, she should carefully comprehend the cultivation experience Mo Yaoqing left behind. Right, this was the Eastern Sea. Maybe she could comprehend here while hunting some sea beasts. If she could get some beast cores that Kunwu didn't have, they might be useful in the future. Moreover, she could also train her ability in fights of magical powers. Thinking up to this point, Tiange clapped her hands. That's settled then. Chapter 335. The location of the Immortals' cave Yaoqing chose was in the depths of the Eastern Sea. Most of the sea beasts that appeared here were in the 5th or 6th rank, and occasionally there were 7th rank beasts. The 5th and 6th ranks were equivalent to the early and middle stage of the core formation realm for human cultivators, while the 7th rank was equivalent to the late stage of the core formation realm, which was just right for Tiange. Of course, this was the depths of the Eastern Sea. Fighting sea beasts on the sea might be more difficult than on land, but human cultivators were stronger than demon beasts in fights of magical powers, even if they lived in the sea. As long as they didn't run into a group of sea beasts, Tiange was confident she could handle them. Even if she couldn't defeat them, she could still escape. With that in mind, Tiange started to make some preparations. For example, what if they were besieged? Moreover, even though she hadn't seen any sea beasts that were above the 7th rank, there might be 8th rank sea beasts that would appear. She couldn't just wait until she encountered one before making her preparations. According to reason, Yaoqing's valley was the best place to hide. With such powerful restrictions, presumably, even 8th rank sea beasts wouldn't be able to rush in. If she couldn't enter the virtual sky world in time, she could just rush inside and stop the sea beasts outside. However, as soon as she came out of the cultivation room, the restriction was immediately restored. Logically speaking, the 7 extremes formation should also be restored. If she wanted to go in again, she would have to break the formation. For this reason, Tiange had to spend some effort. At first, he wanted to try to open another path in the valley, but he found that the restrictions set by Yaoqing were too powerful. Even if he was inside, it was very difficult to break them. Later, she wanted to modify the 7 ultimate formation. However, as soon as she entered the 7 ultimate formation, she found that she could come and go freely. She was incomparably astonished. The formation had obviously been restored, but the spiritual aura inside was still chaotic, just like when she had first arrived. Why didn't it attack her at all when she entered? In the end, she tried again and found that the 7 extremes formation wouldn't attack her at all since she had the 8 trigrams of Tai Chi in her hand. Upon discovering this, Tiange was overjoyed. In that case, she didn't need to open any restrictions or break the 7 extremes formation. A mere Tai Chi 8 diagrams was already so powerful, so how powerful would Yaoqing's natal magic weapon, the soul-frightening bell, be? Tiange couldn't help but be fascinated. Unfortunately, that was Yaoqing's natal magic weapon. She'd already passed away, so that magic weapon should have been destroyed. However, her own natal magic treasure was not bad either. The heaven and earth fan in her hand was originally conceived by Yaoqing. In Yaoqing's notes, she spoke highly of this treasure. Unfortunately, the materials needed were too difficult to find, so she couldn't make it. Tiange, on the other hand, obtained the bone of a divine dragon from the distant past era by chance. Once Tiange finished arranging her escape route, she stepped on the cloud and flew around the island several times. The spirit veins on this island were ordinary, and they were also sealed by Yaoqing with restrictions, so there was only a very thin spiritual aura left. Because of that, only ordinary sea beasts would swim nearby on ordinary days. Demonic beasts were rarely seen. It was only after Tiange ran a little further away that she finally found sea beasts in the 5th rank and above. Upon discovering sea beasts, Tiange didn't hold back at all. As long as the sea beasts were lower than the 6th rank and had 2 or less, she would use her heaven and earth fan and flying sword to directly take their lives and seize their beast cores. Sea beasts below rank 6 were no match for her. The reason why demonic beasts were so tyrannical was because of their physical bodies. Although human cultivators' physical bodies were much weaker than demonic beasts, they possessed intelligence. With their powerful refining techniques, they created magical treasures that were much stronger than demonic beasts' physical bodies. The illusory formation carried by the heaven and earth fan was precisely the nemesis of demonic beasts. They had low intelligence and couldn't distinguish between real and fake illusory formations. Under the power of the heaven and earth fan, they foolishly bumped into it and became turtles in a jar. The more Emotinga killed, the more proficient she became. She gradually understood the various uses of the heaven and earth fan and became handy. 2 months passed quickly. During this time, she hunted 1 sea beast a day on average and had accumulated 50 to 60 beast cores. However, gradually, she couldn't find any sea beasts. In the past few days, she flew very far away from the island, but she still couldn't find any traces of sea beasts. It couldn't be that she killed all the sea beasts in the vicinity, right? Emotinga was puzzled. The sea was much wider than the land, so how could there only be so many sea beasts? She forgot that the sea beasts she killed were all high-rank sea beasts. Even if the sea was vast, it was impossible for there to be endless high-rank sea beasts for her to kill in the nearby waters. However, Emotinga was somewhat addicted to killing. In order to find sea beasts, she ran farther and farther away. Stepping on the cloud-treading boots, Emotinga stared at the calm sea. Suddenly, she saw a splash. Her sharp eyes found a cyan tail, and her divine sense suddenly strengthened. Sure enough, a sea beast was diving to the sea at an extremely fast speed. Judging from the spiritual aura emitted from its whole body, it should be a 5th-rank demonic beast. A flying sword immediately appeared in her hand. With a flick of her sleeve, the flying sword pierced downwards at lightning speed, bringing with it a surge of spiritual aura. It rushed to the surface of the sea and pierced the green-scaled tail. Roar! With a dull roar, the sea beast suddenly jumped out of the sea, swinging its tail and gliding, trying to shake off the flying sword. Sea dragon? Emotinga was a little surprised to see the appearance of this sea beast. Of course, sea dragons weren't real dragons, they were just a kind of sea race that was similar to dragons. They were much shorter than dragons, had short wings, and were more suitable for swimming in the water. They had no horns and sharp teeth. Their bodies were covered with cyan scales, which looked very similar to dragons. Although they weren't real dragons, sea dragons could be regarded as very useful sea beasts. According to ancient records, sea dragons' skin and bones were very tough and good materials for refining tools. However, sea dragons were very rare among sea beasts. She had been busy here for more than 2 months, but she had only seen 1 sea dragon, and it had escaped. Since there was a sea dragon in front of her, and it was only in the 5th rank, she certainly couldn't let it go. Emotinga unfolded the heaven and earth fan, rushed down, and spread the fan. Layers of mountains and rivers pressed down on the sea dragon. The sea dragon's tail was still nailed to her flying sword, so it couldn't dodge. It was immediately covered tightly. Seeing this, Emotinga shook her arm, took back her flying sword, and was about to stab down and kill the sea dragon. At this time, there was a sudden fluctuation at the bottom of the sea, and a powerful spiritual aura came up from the bottom. At the same time, the surrounding sea surged, and the wind and waves were strong. Emotinga furrowed her brows and looked around. Could it be that some kind of powerful sea beast had appeared? The spiritual aura fluctuation became clearer and clearer. Emotinga was sure that it was a 7th-rank sea beast. Although it was a little difficult to fight against a 7th-rank sea beast, it wasn't impossible. She thought for a moment and decided to kill this sea dragon first, then fight against this 7th-rank sea beast. But just as she was about to throw the flying sword in her hand, a voice came to her mind. Stop. Emotinga was shocked. It was a voice transmission through divine sense. This sea beast can actually understand human language. Waves as high as several dozen feet were set off on the surface of the sea. Emotinga had no choice but to fly higher to avoid the waves. At this time, the mosasaurus that she had trapped began to roar and twist excitedly. Then, a sea beast broke out of the water. It was also a sea dragon, but it was much larger than the 5th-rank sea dragon she trapped. Its whole body was covered with blue scales, glowing with a faint golden light, and its slender eyes were staring at Mo Tiange deeply. At this moment, Mo Tiange felt that this pair of eyes contained endless vicissitudes and wisdom. 7th rank sea beasts should have very low intelligence. Only when they reached the 8th rank could their intelligence be comparable to that of humans. Human. Looking at this pair of eyes, Mo Tiange heard the voice in her mind again. Don't hurt my children. Looking at this sea dragon, Mo Tiange narrowed her eyes slightly. This was the first time she had talked to a demonic beast. Who are you? She asked tentatively. The sea dragon floated in the air, gently flicked its tail, and communicated with her again through divine sense. I'm the ancestor of the sea dragons in this area. Oh. Mo Tiange nodded. You can understand human language? The sea dragon looked at her and opened its mouth. I've lived for nearly 10,000 years. In my early years, I was the spiritual beast of a powerful cultivator, so I also understand human language. A cultivator? The sea dragon shook its head and looked like it was nodding. Yes, this cultivator has died. After his death, the spiritual beast contract expired, and I was free. I've lived here for thousands of years. Hearing this, Mo Tiange narrowed her eyes. Thousands of years, a powerful cultivator, and a spiritual beast. Could it be Mo Yaoqing's spiritual beast? But she didn't ask immediately. Instead, she asked, You're just a 7th rank demonic beast. How can you live for so long? The sea dragon said, Our sea dragon clan has the bloodline of the primordial divine dragon, so we're different from these low-rank demonic beasts. This sentence was full of pride. Obviously, it was very proud of its bloodline. The lifespan of demonic beasts is different from you humans. Besides, the lifespan of us sea dragons is far longer than that of ordinary demonic beasts. It's very common for us to live for tens of thousands of years at most. I see. The sea dragon nodded and looked at the little sea dragon, who was still trapped in her heaven and earth fan. Human, you've been here for several months. In these months, you've killed most of the high-ranked demonic beasts in this area and almost killed a member of our sea dragon clan. If you go on like this, all the high-ranked demonic beasts in this area will be killed by you. At that time, you'll attract a catastrophe. What catastrophe? Mo Tiange asked. The relationship between humans and demonic beasts was one of killing and the other being killed, so she was not bound by morality and didn't feel that she had done anything wrong. The sea dragon said, Our sea clan still has a group of 7th rank sea beasts that haven't been dispatched. Your behavior has angered us. If you go on like this, we'll besiege and kill you. Mo Tiange smiled and said, If you can kill me, I won't have anything to say. The sea dragon blinked and anger appeared in its eyes. Don't go too far. Although we demonic beasts are not as good as you humans in fights of magical power, you're only equivalent to a 6th rank demonic beast. If a dozen 7th rank demonic beasts besieged you, are you sure you can escape? Mo Tiange paused, slowly put away her smile, and glanced at the sea dragon. Then what do you want? You're not just here to warn me, are you? Warning? Sort of, said the sea dragon. But I want to reach a consensus with you. Oh. What consensus? The sea dragon looked at the little sea dragon below and said, Let it go. From now on, don't kill any sea beasts here. Mo Tiange said calmly, Then what can I get? If you don't kill any more, then we 7th rank sea beasts won't besiege you. In addition, I'll give you a secret as repayment. A secret? Mo Tiange thought for a moment and smiled again. If you're strong enough, are you afraid that I'll continue to kill? Even in exchange for a secret? Hearing her words, the sea dragon's eyes were filled with anger, and it shouted in a deep voice, Human. The reason why we don't want to fight with you is that you're very strong. Even if we can besiege and kill you, demonic beasts will be sacrificed. We, the Sea Clan, have lived here peacefully for many years. We don't want to get involved in the killing, not because we're afraid of you. Mo Tiange didn't speak. She knew that the sea dragon was right. Besieged by a dozen 7th-rank sea beasts, even if she could escape, it would be very dangerous. Besides, she had already taken advantage of them. If she still didn't want to stop, she would be asking for a mile after taking an inch. But although she thought so, she couldn't show weakness in words. She smiled slightly and looked into the sea dragon's eyes without fear. Well, I admit you're right. I don't want to fight with a dozen 7th-rank sea beasts. But I'd like to hear your secret and see if it's worth it for me to stop. Chapter 336. The sea dragon didn't answer immediately. Instead, it looked down at the little sea dragon trapped in the heaven and earth fan's illusory formation. Let it go. Mo Tienga raised her hand, and the heaven and earth fan returned to her hand. The illusory formation suddenly disappeared. The sea dragon roared at the little sea dragon. The little sea dragon looked up, nodded, dived down, and disappeared into the water. You can say it now. Human, please swear to keep your oath and stop killing the nearby sea clans. Only then will I tell you my secret. Mo Tienga smiled. If you don't tell me your secret, how will I know if it's worth my oath? The sea dragon's eyes were filled with anger. Are you so confident in your strength? Mo Tienga waved the heaven and earth fan in her hand and said lightly, it's been so many days, but you haven't united. I think you see clans usually kill each other, right? A group of enemies who hate each other. Even if I can't beat them, it's not a problem for me to escape. The sea dragon's words seemed sincere, but Mo Tienga knew that she couldn't take it seriously. Lived peacefully for thousands of years? Could it be that the sea race usually ate aquatic plants? The law of the jungle was the law of nature. The sea clans also had a relationship of killing and being killed, of hunting and being hunted. The sea had never been calm. The sea dragon said these words just to tease her. If she really believed it, she would be a fool. The sea dragon didn't speak and stared at Mo Tienga with eyes full of wisdom. After a long time, it said, "You're very smart, very similar to my former master." Mo Tienga's expression didn't change after receiving its praise. She looked at the sea dragon calmly and asked, "What about your secret? Do you want to tell me?" For some reason, the sea dragon felt that there was a hint of sarcasm in her calm eyes. Was it an illusion? The sea dragon blinked and continued to communicate with her through divine thoughts. I can tell you this secret first, but remember, if you don't stop after hearing this secret, then we, the Sea Clan, who have grudges against each other, will join forces to deal with you first. This was something Mo Tienga believed. Even though the Sea tribe usually fought and killed each other, when a human suddenly appeared in the sea and threatened the lives of all the sea beasts, they would still choose to unite first. Don't worry, I'm not stupid. I never joke around with my life. Her tone was too calm. The sea dragon shook its head to shake off its doubts and said, "What I want to tell you is that there's an island near the sea, and there's a treasure left by a powerful cultivator on it." It paused for a while, but in the end, it didn't see any reaction from Mo Tienga. She was still looking at it with a mocking smile. This puzzled the sea dragon, who was far smarter than other monsters. Don't you want these treasures? Mo Tienga nodded and said calmly, "What else?" I can tell you the exact location of the treasures. If you crack the formation outside, all the treasures will be yours. In the end, the sea dragon couldn't go on. For some reason, it felt that the human in front of it didn't seem to be interested in what it was saying. Mo Tienga suddenly stopped smiling and sighed. Do you still want to say that these treasures were left by your former master, who was a powerful nascent soul cultivator? The sea dragon's eyes widened in shock. You, Mo Tienga shook her head and tapped her palm with the heaven and earth fan. Yes, you sea dragons have wisdom that surpasses other demonic beasts, but you're still demonic beasts. When it came to wisdom, which species in this world could surpass humans? Humans were creatures created by God with himself as a template. This sea dragon first spoke to her in a wise and calm tone, making her think that it was an equal creature. Then, It tried to trick her into going to the island where Mo Yaoqing passed away in a sitting posture with a warning and a deal. If she was tempted by the treasures and found the traces of the 7-terminal formation, she would probably believe what it said was true. At that time, even if she didn't die under the 7-terminal formation, she would still enter Mo Yaoqing's cave and think that she could take everything away. Then she would die without a burial place. If she hadn't come to find Mo Yaoqing's immortal's cave and had already found it, she might have fallen into this trap. Therefore, this sea dragon easily deceived her and killed her. No wonder Mo Yaoqing wanted to accept this sea dragon as a spiritual beast. Such wisdom was no less than that of most human beings. Seeing her scrutinizing gaze sweep over it, the Mosasaurus straightened the green scales on its back, instantly ready to fight. Seeing this, Mo Tiange smiled and opened the heaven and earth fan. Why don't you call your allies? Or have you not had time to form an alliance? There was anger in the sea dragon's eyes. Don't think that we demonic beasts can't beat you just because you're a human. You're only in the 6th rank, but I'm already in the 7th rank. It's not that easy to defeat me. Then let's try. The smile on Mo Tiange's face disappeared. She gently waved her sleeves, and the art of primordial spirit formed a spiritual aura shield around her. She was sure that the sea dragon was here to scare her off. Maybe it was right. If she continued to kill, these sea clans would unite sooner or later, but not now. Maybe in order to save its offspring, this sea dragon wanted to scare her away by relying on its wisdom far superior to other demonic beasts. It even wanted to lure her into a trap and kill her in one fell swoop. Even if this sea dragon might have been Mo Yaoqing's spiritual beast, it was now a demonic beast. If she really thought it was as wise and calm as it appeared, she would have no chance to regret it. The demonic beast's instinct made the sea dragon choose to attack as soon as it saw Mo Tiange use the spiritual aura shield. It swung its tail, and huge waves rose to the sky. The sea dragon had the blood of the divine dragon, an ancient divine beast, and a divine dragon could call the wind and summon the rain. But these waves didn't get close to Mo Tiange. The spiritual aura shield of the art of primordial spirit kept these waves outside. Seeing this, the sea dragon opened its mouth and a water spell rushed toward Mo Tiange. Mo Tiange waved the heaven and earth fan, and the mountain water in the fan suddenly turned into a solid object and pressed down on the sea dragon. The sea dragon swung its tail, jumped into the air, and jumped out of the range of the heaven and earth fan. Mo Tiange was a little surprised. A 7th-rank demonic beast was really much stronger. With the treasures she had killed all the 5th-rank and 6th-rank sea beasts she encountered in the past few days, but this sea dragon easily avoided her heaven and earth fan. The next moment, the sea dragon swung its tail, and a huge spiritual aura pressed down. Mo Tiange took out the white silk handkerchief and wrapped it around her body, leaving a white trace. The handkerchief turned into a mist and firmly protected her, making the spiritual aura return in vain. Then, the heaven and earth fan in her hand unfolded again. This time, instead of mountains and rivers, there was a clear cry, and a spirit crane flew out and rushed straight to the sea dragon. The sea dragon was taken aback. It was a little uncertain whether this was real or an illusion. Although its intelligence was no less than that of ordinary people, it needed knowledge of formations to distinguish illusions. In this regard, it was obviously no different from ordinary demonic beasts. In the end, it chose to avoid it. Mo Tiange was already waiting here. She waved the heaven and earth fan again, and the mountains and rivers loomed. The sea dragon couldn't avoid it, so in an emergency, it could only open its mouth and bite down. Mo Tiange's eyes were cold. A light flashed in her hand, and the spirit cloud's rui was instantly thrown out. With a boom, the surrounding spiritual aura suddenly exploded. Ouch! The sea dragon screamed in pain and rolled in the air. It avoided the crane and blocked the heaven and earth fan, but it couldn't avoid the spirit cloud's rui. Mo Tiange waved her sleeves, took back the spirit cloud's rui, and slowly closed the heaven and earth fan. She didn't want to take the opportunity to kill it. After a while, the sea dragon recovered and stopped rolling. At this time, its blue scales were full of blood. If it were any other time, it would immediately escape to the bottom of the sea, but the thing that just injured it made it stop. It stared at Imo with vigilance and a trace of doubt. What? What was that thing you just now? Imo held up the spirit cloud's rui in her hand and asked with a smile, "Is it this?" The sea dragon blinked, and there was shock in its eyes. "This is." You, Imo stopped smiling, looked straight at it, and asked, "Was your former master surnamed Imo?" The sea dragon wanted to wave its tail, but the power of the spirit cloud's rui just now had already injured it, so it could only continue to blink. "Have you been there?" Imo sighed and put away the spirit cloud's rui. "My surname is also Mo," she said. "I came to find the cave on that island." The sea dragon looked in the direction she pointed, turned back, and was shocked. "You passed the test?" Mo smiled. "You really know about the test. Just now, you wanted to trick me there and use your master's trap to kill me, didn't you?" The sea dragon was silent. After a while, it said, "We sea dragons are smarter than ordinary demonic beasts. In the past, my master accepted me as a spiritual beast precisely because I was far smarter than ordinary demonic beasts. There's nothing I don't know about my master. Any demonic beast with the bloodline of the primordial divine beasts would be smarter than ordinary demonic beasts." Mo also knew this. This sea dragon had lived for nearly 10,000 years, but it was only at the 7th rank. It could be seen that Mo Yaoqing accepted it as a spiritual beast not because of its fighting power. In this case, what it said should be true. The sea dragon moved its head, and its intelligent eyes focused on Mo again. "Human, are you my master's successor?" "Sort of," Mo said softly. "She's my great ancestor." "Great ancestor." There was confusion in the sea dragon's eyes. Obviously, it still couldn't figure out the relationship between her and its master. However, this didn't prevent it from understanding. It turned its head and said in a much calmer tone, "Since you're my master's successor, then I believe you." Mo smiled. "Your master has already passed away, and the spiritual beast contract between you and her has also expired. Why are you still willing to believe me?" The sea dragon glanced at her calmly and said, "I still want to make a deal with you. I'll use a secret in exchange for you to stop. Aren't you afraid that I won't take the oath after hearing your secret this time?" The sea dragon paused for a while, looked at the island in the distance where Mo Yaoqing passed away, and said, "This is my master's secret. Since you're my master's successor, you're qualified to hear it." Mo Yaoqing's life was recorded on that jade slip. What other secrets were there in the depths of the East Sea? The sea dragon said slowly, "The secret about how my master came here." Mo was stunned. The secret about how Mo Yaoqing came to the celestial pole from Yinzhong? This was indeed the only thing she hadn't recorded clearly in the jade slip. Chapter 337. Wait. Mo stopped what the sea dragon was about to say. "How do I know you're not lying to me this time?" The sea dragon opened its mouth and froze. After a while, it said, "But you beat me, but you didn't kill me." It thought that for humans, this behavior was a show of kindness. Mo said lightly, "I didn't kill you because you used to be my great ancestor's spiritual beast. For the sake of my great ancestor, since you're not a threat to me, I don't mind letting you go." This sentence made the sea dragon feel Mo strong confidence. It couldn't help but ask, "Then you, but for the sake of my great ancestor, are you also kind to me?" Mo looked straight at it. "After all, the spiritual beast contract has expired. You're just a demonic beast to me now." The sea dragon floated in the air, and its eyes became distant. Its injuries were not light, and tiny drops of blood kept dripping into the sea. "Although we demonic beasts are hostile to humans, we'll be grateful if a human saves us," the sea dragon said calmly. 6,000 years ago, I lived in the Sea of Returning Ruins. My whole clan was slaughtered, and I was almost killed. It was my master who saved me. So, I was willing to sign a spiritual beast contract with her and become her spiritual beast. Mo Tienga's eyes moved. She put her hand into her chinkuan bag, took out a jade bottle, and threw it over. Eat it. Your injuries are very serious. The sea dragon opened its mouth and bit the jade bottle. There was doubt in its eyes. I also want to make a deal with you. The sea dragon shook its head and didn't speak. I know that demonic beasts like you don't have medicinal pills to eat, so your cultivation is much slower than that of humans. Moreover, the most difficult hurdle for demonic beasts is the 7th rank to the 8th rank. If you can pass it, you can transform and become a real spiritual creature, but if you can't, you'll always be a demonic beast. Mo Tienga raised her eyebrows and said proudly, I can give you medicinal pills that may help you successfully advance to the 8th rank, but in exchange, you must let your descendants sign a spiritual beast contract with me and tell me that secret. Mo Tienga smiled. Of course, the medicinal pills you're biting are not part of the deal. They're just for you to heal. The sea dragon didn't communicate with her again. A trace of doubt flashed in its eyes, but soon, it bit the jade bottle and swallowed all the medicinal pills inside. Subsequently, a faint layer of spiritual energy appeared around its body, wrapping around its wounds. Then, the wounds lit up with a white light, and in the white light, the wounds healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a while, the light dissipated. The sea dragon turned its head, wagged its tail, and said, Thank you, my injuries are much better. Mo Tienga smiled. Can we talk about our deal? The sea dragon hesitated for a moment and said, Our sea dragon clan is very happy in this sea. I don't want my descendants to become the spiritual beasts of human cultivators again. In the face of this answer, Mo Tienga smiled. Even if I give you medicinal pills that can help you advance to the 8th rank? The sea dragon twisted its head and seemed to be struggling. After a while, it said, It's not easy for demonic beasts to advance to the 8th rank. I've been with Master for 1,000 years, but I've only advanced from the 5th rank to the 7th rank. No matter how many medicinal pills Master has given me, I've never advanced to the 8th rank. I don't think it's worth exchanging the freedom of my descendants. Hearing this, Mo Tienga nodded gently. You care about your descendants very much. The sea dragon blinked and showed some kindness. As long as you stop hunting the sea beasts in this area, I'll tell you the secret. It's still valid. Although we sea clans hunt and kill each other, your indiscriminate killing will destroy the balance between us. The sea dragon clan has a good life here, and we don't want to give it up. I see. Mo Tienga sighed. She looked at the sea dragon and said, But how can I believe your secret is true? The sea dragon was stunned. It wagged its tail and seemed a little distressed. Well, you're willing to take the risk to stop me for your descendants, which shows that your clan cares about them very much, right? The sea dragon fell silent. After a while, its eyes flashed with determination. Human, even if you kill me, I won't give up the freedom of my descendants. Mo Tienga smiled and waved her hand. Don't be in a hurry to refuse. Let me ask you, you're only a 7th rank demonic beast, but you can live for nearly 10,000 years. So, the lifespan of sea dragons can reach 10,000 years? The sea dragon hesitated for a moment and nodded. Yes, at least 10,000 years. Then, for you, the lifespan of human cultivators is very short, right? After a moment of silence, the sea dragon agreed again. Yes. When I followed Master, I had lived for thousands of years. At that time, Master was still very young, but after Master passed away, I lived for thousands of years. So, let your descendants follow me. Even if I'm as strong as your Master in the future, the price is only 1,000 years of freedom, right? The sea dragon didn't object to this conclusion. Yes. Mo Tienga smiled. What if I can let it rush to the 8th rank? Is it worth more than 1,000 years of freedom? Upon hearing this, the sea dragon froze. Doubt, calculation, and hesitation flashed in its eyes. Motinga knew it needed to think, so she didn't urge it. She just waved the heaven and earth fan in her hand and looked around as if she was just standing there watching the scenery. Advancing to the 8th rank was almost an irresistible temptation for demonic beasts. Although this sea dragon refused once, it would be difficult to refuse again. After a long time, the voice sounded in its mind again. You're only in the 6th rank. Can you really do it? This is something even my master couldn't do. Motinga smiled. Wait here for a moment, and you'll know whether it's possible or not. After that, she touched the spot between her eyebrows and cast a spell. Under the sea dragon's shocked gaze, she entered the virtual sky world. In order to heal Lord Daoist Jinghe, she had used up the flowerless golden fruit, but she still had other spiritual medicines that could help advance. After wandering around the medicinal field, Motinga grabbed 100 fruits and came out of the virtual sky world. Seeing her suddenly appear in front of it, the sea dragon was shocked. It shook its head, somewhat confused. Did humans invent some magic arts again? But then its eyes were attracted by the 100 fruits in Motinga's hand. Although it had lived in the sea for a long time, it didn't prevent it from seeing that this was a 10,000-year-old spiritual fruit. The 10,000-year-old spiritual fruit contained a huge amount of spiritual aura. If it ate it, it was very likely to break through to the 8th rank in one fell swoop. Seeing the sea dragon's shocked look and its undisguised stare at the fruit in her hand, Motinga smiled. Do you believe me now? The sea dragon couldn't help but swallow. It moved its eyes away from the 100 fruits with difficulty and looked at Motinga. This time, it was silent for a long time. Motinga wasn't in a hurry and just waited patiently. After a long time, the sea dragon's voice sounded. Human, I believe you. Although you're not as strong as my master, with these treasures, maybe you can really make your spiritual beast break through to the 8th rank. It hesitated for a moment and finally said firmly, well, I'll go tell my descendants and see if any of them are willing to be your spiritual beast. Motinga smiled. Okay, just go. I'll wait here. The sea dragon nodded, flicked its tail, and dived into the sea in a hurry. Motinga looked at the place where it disappeared and put away the 100 fruits. She wasn't afraid that the sea dragon would come up with some ideas to snatch it. It certainly wouldn't be willing to share a spiritual fruit that could help it break through to the 8th rank with other 7th rank demonic beasts. Moreover, if it agreed to her request, it might have another 8th rank demonic beast among its descendants, which was very attractive to the sea dragon who loved its descendants very much. She tried every possible means to accept a sea dragon as a spiritual beast, not only because she felt that this race had wisdom that ordinary demonic beasts didn't have, but more importantly, its descendants were the old sea dragon's weakness. In the beginning, it had been so malicious to her and wanted to deceive and kill her. How could she dare to believe the secret it told her? Only if she accepted its descendants as spiritual beasts would she dare to believe its words. Before long, spiritual aura fluctuations came from the sea again. Motinga roughly recognized that the leader was a 7th rank demonic beast, and there were several 5th rank and 6th rank demonic beasts. A moment later, the sea dragon emerged with its descendants. Human, my descendants are willing to agree to your conditions. You can choose one of them. Motinga looked down. In addition to the old sea dragon, there were 5 little sea dragons in front of her, 3 in the 5th rank and 2 in the 6th rank. They were much smaller than the old sea dragon, and the smallest one had a wound on its tail. It was the one she had injured at the beginning. You are all willing? The 5 little sea dragons all wagged their tails and didn't answer immediately. One of them asked, can you really help Grandpa advance? Motinga was even more surprised. Can you also speak human language? The old sea dragon said, as long as we sea dragons reach the 5th rank, we will have wisdom no lower than that of other 8th rank demonic beasts. Oh. Motinga nodded and answered the previous question. I can only give it a spiritual fruit that can help it advance, but I can't guarantee whether it can really advance. The 5 little sea dragons looked at each other and excitedly patted their tails. Then we're all willing. Hearing this, Enchanting smiled. It seemed that not only did the old sea dragon love its descendants, but its descendants also respected their ancestor very much, which made her feel relieved. She turned to the old sea dragon and asked, "Are your descendants thousands of years old?" The old sea dragon said, "Xiaofan is only 800 years old, and the others are more than 1,000 to 4,000 years old." Xiaofan? The little sea dragon with a wound on its tail patted the water and timidly said, "It's me." The old sea dragon pointed to the others with its fin. "This is Xiaoyu, Xiaofeng, Xiaokai, and Xiaoyun." Enchanting wanted to laugh. The names of these sea dragons were interesting. She couldn't help but ask, "What about you?" The old sea dragon answered, "My name is Xiaoqing." Enchanting had the urge to laugh wildly. Her ancestor, Yaoqing, was really a talent. The old sea dragon sounded like a human old man, but he actually had a name like Xiaoqing. She suppressed her laughter and asked, "Then what's your surname?" "You're not surnamed Song, are you?" "No." The old sea dragon shook its head. "Our surname is Bai. My name is Bai Xiaoqing." This time, Enchanting not only wanted to laugh wildly, but also wanted to pound the ground. Chapter 338. Sea dragons were actually ferocious-looking sea monsters. They had sharp heads, big mouths, sharp teeth, and the scales on their bodies were as sharp as blades. However, this group of sea dragons actually had the surname Bai, and they even had such a cute name. Enchanting turned her head and held back her laughter for a long time. Then she turned back and said to the old sea dragon, "Help me decide. As long as it's your offspring, I'll take it." The old sea dragon hesitated, then reluctantly looked at the 5 little sea dragons and said to her, "Human, you choose." "They're all the same to me. It's hard for me to choose." Upon seeing its expression, Enchanting no longer forced it. She nodded and said, "I'll take this one." The one she picked was the youngest sea dragon, Bai Xiaofan. Seeing that it had been hit, the other 4 sea dragons surrounded it and roared at the same time. They spoke in the language of sea dragons, which Enchanting didn't understand. But from their looks, she could guess that they were very close to each other and were reluctant to part. Seeing this, Enchanting couldn't help but smile. Ever since she entered the cultivation world, she rarely saw such a scene of brotherly affection. Even though they were demonic beasts, they still made her feel warm. The 5 little sea dragons roared for a while, then the old sea dragon roared, and they immediately quieted down. The old sea dragon looked at the little sea dragon called Xiaofan and asked it to swim closer. Then it turned to Enchanting and said, "Okay, human, you can sign a spiritual beast contract with my child." Enchanting looked at the little sea dragon in front of her. Its tail was still injured and it looked at her timidly. She knew that the little sea dragon almost died under her flying sword, so it must be afraid of her. But it didn't matter. As long as they signed a spiritual beast contract, the little sea dragon would trust her. Enchanting closed her eyes and gathered her divine sense. The reason why he chose this little sea dragon was that it was the weakest among all the sea dragons, and its divine sense was also weak, so it would be easier to establish a spirit beast contract. Secondly, it was only 800 years old, but it already had a cultivation of the 5th rank, which showed that it was extremely talented among demonic beasts. Her divine sense came into contact with Bai Xiaofan. Under strong pressure, Bai Xiaofan obediently signed a subordinate contract with Enchanting. From this moment on, Enchanting was its master. They weren't allowed to hurt each other until their spiritual beast contract was dissolved or until one of them died. Seeing that Enchanting opened her eyes and the fear in Xiaofan's eyes faded, old sea dragon Bai Xiaoqing was surprised. So fast? The fact that they finished signing the spiritual beast contract so quickly could only mean that Enchanting's divine sense was much stronger than Xiaofan's. Xiaofan was a demonic beast equivalent to a human in the early stage of the core formation realm. Although its divine sense wasn't as good as a human's, it wasn't much weaker. Mo Tiange, on the other hand, was only in the middle stage of the core formation realm. Mo Tiange smiled and waved at Xiaofan. Xiaofan was still timid, but it was no longer afraid of her. It obediently approached her and said, "Master, we've signed a contract. Can you give the spiritual fruit to my grandfather?" "Of course." Mo Tiange took out a healing medicinal pill and threw it into its mouth. "Wait here for a moment." After that, she touched the space between her eyebrows again. After several breaths, she entered the virtual sky world and took out 200 fruits. "Here, this is for you." Mo Tiange handed them to Old Sea Dragon together with the original one. Seeing the 300 fruits, Old Sea Dragon and the 4 little sea dragons' eyes lit up. Old Sea Dragon carefully took them with his fin. With a flash of white light, the 100 fruits disappeared, hidden somewhere. Demonic beasts didn't have things like Qianquan bags, but they had their own storage space, which was much more convenient than humans. "Okay, I've given you what I promised. Can you tell me the secret now?" Maybe because of the 100 fruits or because Xiaofan had become her spiritual beast, Old Sea Dragon's voice became a little respectful. "I've told Xiaofan about this in detail. It will tell you." Mo Tiange nodded. "Okay." Xiaofan was now her spiritual beast, so she wasn't worried that this Old Sea Dragon would go back on its word. "Then our deal is complete." Old Sea Dragon didn't answer. He looked at Xiaofan next to her and sighed. Then, the 4 little sea dragons roared again. Xiaofan also roared in response. The 5 little sea dragons gathered together, rubbing their heads against each other and slapping each other with their fins, as if to express their reluctance to part. Mo Tiange smiled and watched them reluctantly say goodbye to each other, but she didn't urge them. After a long time, Old Sea Dragon roared again, interrupting their reluctance to part. Under Old Sea Dragon's scolding, the 4 little sea dragons finally separated from Xiaofan, but they lined up and slapped their tails against the water, as if they were performing some kind of ceremony. Xiaofan looked at them and followed the rhythm, wagging its tail to echo them. After a long time, they stopped. Old Sea Dragon turned his head and said to Mo Tiange, "Okay, human, you can take Xiaofan away." Mo Tiange nodded gently and saluted them to show respect. "Before I pass away, I'll bring Xiaofan back here to reunite with you. If I'm lucky enough to advance to the deification realm, then as long as Xiaofan asks, I'll also terminate the spiritual beast contract and give it back its freedom. I'll take my leave now." Old Sea Dragon floated on the sea with the 4 little sea dragons. He pressed his fins against his chest and bowed his head to her, which seemed to be the etiquette of sea dragons. Under the gazes of 1 old and 4 young sea dragons, Mo Tiange flew to the distant island with Bai Xiaofan and eventually disappeared into the sky. After returning to the island, Mo Tiange took Xiaofan into Mo Yaoqing's cave and treated Xiaofan's wound first. Xiaofan's injury wasn't serious. The sea dragon's armor was very tough, and Mo Tiange wasn't good at using a flying sword. Although her sword had left a wound on its tail, it wasn't to the point where it couldn't move. After taking medicinal pills, the wound quickly healed. Amazing! Xiaofan twisted his head and was stunned to see the wound on his tail disappear. "It's gone so soon." Old Sea Dragon Bai Xiaoqing's voice sounded like that of a human old man, while Bai Xiaofan was a human teenager whose voice hadn't changed yet. 800 years old was still a child compared to a 10,000-year lifespan. Mo Tiange asked with a smile, "You don't have medicinal pills. What will you do if you're injured?" Xiaofan said, "We also have healing herbs at the bottom of the sea, but the effect isn't very good. There are also healing spells." "Master, I heard that you humans can concoct medicinal pills. These medicinal pills are magical and can help you advance quickly. Is that true?" Mo Tiange couldn't help but laugh. "It's not that magical. It's just that your cultivation will be faster and your advancement will be easier." "Wow, it's much better than us demonic beasts." Xiaofan's voice was very happy and it looked at her longingly. Master, will I also have medicinal pills to eat in the future? Of course. Mo Tiange reached out and touched its ferocious-looking head. You're my spiritual beast, so of course I'll give you medicinal pills. Then she smiled. By the way, I haven't asked you yet. Does it matter if you leave the water? Sea dragons were demonic beasts in the sea. Naturally, they could exert their greatest strength in the sea. However, if their spells had taken shape, it wouldn't affect their strength. It doesn't matter, Xiaofan answered. Our sea dragon clan spells are innate. Besides, I'm already in the 5th rank, so I can survive without relying on water. As it spoke, it rubbed its head. Besides, Grandpa has taught me everything. I'm very smart, so I remember everything. There was a trace of pride in its voice, as if a child was saying, praise me quickly. Mo Tiange couldn't help but laugh and stroked its head. You're really so smart. Do you remember all the secrets your grandpa told you? Of course. Xiaofan raised its head without hesitation. Mo Tiange laughed even more happily. She stroked its head again and said, okay, you're my spiritual beast now. I'll take you to a good place. Xiaofan blinked its eyes and looked at her with confusion. Mo Tiange didn't talk nonsense anymore. She held Xiaofan's head with one hand and touched the space between her eyebrows with the other. A bead emerged and she cast an art on it. After several breaths, the two of them appeared in the virtual sky world. Woo-woo. As soon as they entered, a golden shadow rushed over and threw itself into Mo Tiange's arms. It was Fei. She just entered the virtual sky world twice, but she didn't have time to pay attention to it, so it was very depressed. Mo Tiange patted its head and comforted it. Good Fei, are you bored? Let Xiaohua play with you for a while, okay? And I have a new friend. Xiaofan was now staring at the surrounding environment with its slender eyes in surprise. It didn't understand how it changed here in an instant, and this space was so rich in spiritual aura. It couldn't help but think that human spells were so magical. This is Xiaofan, and this is Fei. Being pulled by Mo Tiange, Xiaofan regained its senses and stared at the leopard's-like golden furry ball in front of it. It blinked, not understanding what this thing was. However, for demonic beasts, not their own race usually meant hunting. Therefore, it jumped up and floated in the air, baring its sharp teeth at Fei. Although Fei had been with Mo Tiange for 60 years and had eaten a lot of spiritual plants, perhaps because of the characteristics of its race, it had always been difficult to advance and was still in the 4th rank. For demonic beasts, the gap between the 4th rank and the 5th rank was very big. In particular, Fei wasn't good at fights of magical powers. As long as Xiaofan casually waved its fins or tail, Fei wouldn't be able to resist. The two demonic beasts stared at each other. Seeing Xiaofan's fierce eyes, Fei suddenly stretched out its claws. A white light flashed on its claws and it touched Xiaofan's green scales. In the white light, the fierce light in Xiaofan's eyes gradually dissipated. Although it wasn't her first time seeing it, Mo Tiange still felt it was very magical. Sure enough, Fei was a magical demonic beast. It was born to live in peace with many demonic beasts, which was an anomaly in the world of demonic beasts. Patting Fei's head, Mo Tiange released Xiaohua, who had been staying in her spiritual beast bag. You two go play first. Xiaohua, who had just come out of the spiritual beast bag, also showed hostility to Xiaofan, but under Mo Tiange's divine comprehension order, it was quickly pulled away by Fei to play. Xiaofan, why didn't you attack Fei just now? Xiaofan's voice was a little confused. I felt that it wasn't dangerous, and Mo Tiange nodded. Sure enough, Fei's special ability was like this. She took a few steps forward and waved her hand. Can you adapt to the spiritual aura here? Xiaofan nodded. And the spiritual aura here is very comfortable. At that moment, its eyes lit up when it saw a large medicinal field. Master, that's, Mo Tiange stood by the stream, pointed at the large medicinal field, and said with a smile, "You're already my spiritual beast. You can eat those spiritual plants if you want, but you have to be sure that they're not harmful to you. From now on, this stream is yours. Get along well with Xiaohua and Feifei. They're also my spiritual beasts, understand?" "Yes, master." Chapter 339. Among the three spiritual beasts, Xiaohua and Xiaofan were in the 5th rank, while Feifei was in the 4th rank. Xiaohua was good at fire techniques and possessed Sun Real Fire, which was very powerful. Xiaofan was good at water techniques and grew up in the harsh environment of the sea, so it had a stronger combat power. Although Feifei wasn't strong, it had a special ability to calm people. These three spiritual beasts improved Emo Tianga's strength a lot. She dared to say that there weren't many core formation cultivators in Kunwu who had 2 5th-rank spiritual beasts like her. Spiritual beasts were very difficult to raise. Although there were many cultivators in Kunwu who raised spiritual beasts, they basically couldn't keep up with their cultivation levels. After all, corresponding to their long lifespans, spiritual beasts' cultivation speed was also very slow. Without enough medicinal pills for them to eat, they couldn't keep up with cultivators' cultivation levels at all if they cultivated by themselves. If there were medicinal pills, which cultivator didn't give them to themselves first? Even Lord Daoist Jinghe and Qin Shi couldn't. Lord Daoist Jinghe had a spiritual beast institute, but the highest spiritual beast in it was only in the 7th rank and hadn't reached the 8th rank yet. Qin Shi raised a Chongming bird, which was only in the 5th rank. Because it couldn't keep up with his cultivation level, he usually didn't take it with him. As far as Mo Tiange knew, only Spiritual Beast Sect, one of the 7 great cultivation groups in the Celestial Pole, had spiritual beasts that weren't inferior to cultivators. However, their cultivation technique was special, so they had to start raising spiritual beasts with spiritual beast eggs. Spiritual beast eggs were rare treasures, and each person only had one. Therefore, under normal circumstances, there would only be one spiritual beast that truly recognized its master. But Mo Tiange, who had just broken through to the middle stage of the core formation realm, already had 2 5th-rank spiritual beasts. In other words, her fighting strength was equivalent to that of 2 people. Mo Tiange pondered in her heart for a moment before a smile appeared on her face. With these 2 5th-rank demonic beasts, even if she was alone now, she shouldn't be in too much danger. With that thought, she called Xiaofan with her divine comprehension. Xiaofan quickly flew into the bamboo house, still dripping water. It was very happy in the creek outside the house. Although it had no companions, the spiritual aura in the creek was very rich, so it cultivated very quickly. Moreover, there were countless spiritual herbs waiting for it to eat. "Master, you called me?" Seeing Xiaofan's sharp teeth and hearing its crisp voice, Mo Tiange couldn't help but smile. "Are your injuries healed?" "Yes." Yifan wiped her dripping body with her fins. Instead of landing, she floated in the air. He was a sea beast. Landing on the ground was far less comfortable than floating in the air. "Then, tell me the secret that your grandfather told you." "All right." Lil Fan also had a spirit beast contract, so he was much more obedient than Xiaohua and Feifei. Usually, he was either cultivating in the stream or drooling while looking at those spirit grasses. Occasionally, he would communicate with Xiaohua and Feifei. Aside from that, no matter what Mo Tiange said, she always complied without any objections, unlike Feifei and Xiaohua, who occasionally came to disturb her. Grandpa said that in about a month's flight to the south of this small island, there will be a large island. There's a volcano on that big island, and the inside of the volcano is empty. You can reach a very, very deep place along the volcano. Then you can go underground and walk to the end, and you can get out from a hot spring. That's Yunzhong's South Pole Island. Your grandfather didn't tell you the exact location? Mo Tiange frowned. The sea was so big, and flying in a certain direction was bound to have some deviations. It wouldn't be easy to find this large island. She regretted asking the old sea dragon to lead the way. Master, don't worry. Sensing her mood, Yifan proudly raised his head. We sea beasts have our own way of finding the way in the sea. Grandpa told me, so I can take you there. Oh. Hearing Yifan's words, Mo Tiange relaxed her brows. That's good. After a pause, she asked, is that road safe? Are there demonic beasts or dangers? Grandpa said that this road was accidentally discovered by my master. It's very dark inside, but there's no danger. Mo Tiange nodded and patted Yifan's head. Go back and continue your cultivation. I'll call you when I need you. Yes, Yifan answered obediently, wagged his tail, and flew back to the stream. Mo Tiange sat cross-legged on the rush cushion, lost in thought. If she was asked if she wanted to go to Yunzhong, the answer would be yes. Through Mo Yaoqing's records, she knew that Yunzhong was such a prosperous cultivation world, so how could she not yearn for it? Her talent was already high enough. Spirit stones, offerings from the elders of Xianqing School and Bishuan Court, plus the harvest from the trip to Demonic Mountain, she had an amazing amount of spirit stones. Medicinal pills, at least before she reached the nascent soul realm, and it wasn't like she didn't have medicinal pills after that. Apart from that, what else did she not have? That was experience, a wealth of experience, and a broad horizon. She wanted to see what other continents were like. She wanted to know if Confucian and Buddhist cultivators were the same as Tao cultivators like them. She also wanted to know everything Mo Yaoqing had faced. She couldn't suppress this desire because she knew that this was what she lacked the most on her path of cultivation. However, leaving the celestial pole to go to Yunzhong wasn't a simple matter, even if she knew the exact safe route. First, it was too far, and second, it would take too long. Both were prone to accidents. She even considered going to Yunzhong after returning to Xianqing School and waiting for Qin Shi to come out of his closed-door meditation. However, this would take at least 10 or 20 years. 10 or 20 years wasn't a long time for nascent soul cultivators and even core formation cultivators, but if she wanted to catch up with Qin Shi, she had to make good use of her time. She had just advanced, so she needed to travel to strengthen her mental state before she could continue her closed-door meditation. It was definitely unwise to enter closed-door meditation now. After thinking for a while, Mo Tiange finally decided that she would go to Yunzhong now, alone. Of course, before that, she still had to arrange a lot of things. After all, going to such a far place like Yunzhong would take about a year on the road, and it might take more than 10 years to finish the trip. During this time, Qin Shi and Lord Daoist Jinghe would both be in closed-door meditation, so to avoid accidents, she had to leave some spiritual plants for them. After making her decision, Mo Tiange quickly put it into action. First, she planned to return to Linhai. Although it took several months to find this place, it only took 1 month to return. Because those months were spent searching, she often went the wrong way, but this time, she had the exact route. After returning to Linhai, Mo Tiange rested for a while, then went back to Kunwu through Bishuan Court's transporting formation. She then traveled day and night back to Xianqing School. When she finally returned to Xianqing School, the first thing she did was to see Qin Shi. Although he was in closed-door meditation, Qin Shi only wanted to stabilize his realm this time, so he didn't need to pay too much attention to it. Mo Tiange only touched the restrictions outside, so he stopped cultivating and opened the door of the closed-door meditation room. Why did it take you so long to come back? Qin Shi smiled when he saw her. Mo Tiange walked towards him, and the two of them naturally hugged. It feels like a long time, she said with a sigh, although it hasn't even been a year. Qin Shi also felt this way, so he didn't say anything and just hugged her even tighter. After a while, the two of them had enough hugging and separated slightly. Qin Shi asked with a smile, "You advanced to the middle stage. It seems your trip was very fruitful. Where did you go?" Mo Tiange leaned against him, laid down, and leaned her head on his lap. She then tilted her head to look at him. "Guess." "That I can't guess." Qin Shi fiddled with her hair, his gaze gentle. But seeing you so happy, it must be a good thing, right? Of course. Mo Tienga smiled proudly and no longer hid anything. She told him in detail about her experiences in the past year. Qin Shi listened very carefully. When Mo Tienga said there was a passage between the celestial pole and Yunzhong, his pupils shrank and he said keenly, Yunzhong. You want to go to Yunzhong? The two of them had similar characters and lived together for more than 10 years, so they had a tacit understanding. Mo Tienga wasn't surprised that he guessed her intentions at all. She nodded. Yes, I want to go to Yunzhong. The cultivators in the celestial pole are all trapped on the spirit vein in Kunwu, so I want to go to Yunzhong to see the wider world. Qin Shi didn't say anything, but his expression was very solemn. Mo Tienga's expression also became serious. She straightened up and asked, What's wrong? Is it inappropriate? No. Qin Shi breathed a sigh of relief, held her in his arms, and said with a sigh, It's just that I can't go with you right now. He just advanced to the nascent soul realm, so stabilizing his realm was the most important thing. I know. Mo Tienga paused for a moment but still said, So I decided to go alone. The hand holding her froze. After a while, Qin Shi let go of her and looked straight into her eyes. Are you sure? Mo Tienga nodded. I'm not a troublemaker. You know this. My current strength is enough to protect myself. There won't be a problem for me to go to Yunzhong alone. Qin Shi frowned and didn't say anything for a long time. This matter was too important. Although he had slowly accepted Mo Tienga's idea and was willing to let her travel alone, going to Yunzhong was still too dangerous. Mo Tienga also didn't say anything. It wasn't that she didn't know what Qin Shi was thinking, but she had to take Qin Shi's opinion into consideration for such an important matter. Is there a way to compromise? After a long time, Qin Shi said, I won't stop you if you want to go to Yunzhong, but I won't feel at ease letting you go alone like this. It's too far, and if something happens, I won't be able to save you in time. Mo Tienga thought for a while and said hesitantly, How about I draw a map for you and you come out of closed-door meditation to find me? Qin Shi didn't say anything. Mo Tienga scratched her head, feeling a bit distressed. You can't come out of closed-door meditation now, and I can't wait. Do you still not trust me to protect myself? Qin Shi's gaze softened. He looked at her and said gently, It's not that I don't trust you, but I'm too worried. I know you can protect yourself, but in any case, I'll be worried if you're not by my side. This time, Mo Tienga didn't say anything. She was very touched. After a while, she said, How about I ask Master? Qin Shi thought about it and nodded. That's fine. Master should give us good advice. Chapter 340. A year passed, but Lord Daoist Jinghe never left his immortal's cave. According to the maids, Grandmaster didn't even make a sound this whole year. The closed-door meditation room had always been quiet. When Qin Shi and Mo Tienga heard this, they glanced at each other in astonishment. It wasn't that he was surprised that his master's injuries were so serious, but that he actually held himself back for so long without speaking. It was really not easy. The two of them went to the closed-door meditation room together. After Qin Shi made a set of hand seals, Lord Daoist Jinghe's voice rang out. Tienga, what's the matter? Before entering closed-door meditation this time, Lord Daoist Jinghe once said he wouldn't come out within 10 years. It had only been a year now. Qin Shi raised his voice and said, Master, we have something we want to ask for your opinion on. There was no more sound coming from the room. After a while, the stone door slowly opened. After the two of them entered, the stone door closed. When Mo Tienga saw Lord Daoist Jinghe sitting cross-legged, regulating his breath and healing his injuries, his complexion looked a lot better. At the very least, he no longer looked old. She felt a little more at ease. From the looks of it, her master's injuries were much better. Master, how are your injuries? Lord Daoist Jinghe opened his eyes. When he saw them, he smiled and said, "Fortunately, you guys brought back those spiritual panaceas. Master's injuries are much better now. Moreover, maybe it'll be a blessing in disguise." Mo Tiange and Qin Shi were bewildered. They glanced at each other and simultaneously thought of a possibility. They were both pleasantly surprised. "Master, you have a chance to make a realm breakthrough?" Lord Daoist Jinghe nodded. Although his appearance hadn't recovered yet, his expression was beaming with joy like before. "Not bad. In this 1 year of closed-door meditation to heal my injuries, I've already comprehended something. The late stage of the nascent soul realm isn't like before, where there was an insurmountable gap." This was a pleasant surprise. Both Qin Shi and Mo Tiange were overjoyed. They said in unison, "Congratulations, Master." Lord Daoist Jinghe waved his hand and restrained himself a little. "It's just a possibility. It'll take at least 20 to 30 years to heal my injuries, let alone make a realm breakthrough." Right after he finished speaking, he asked them, "Since you came here, what do you want to ask?" "Yes. Master, according to your suggestion, I entered closed-door meditation a year ago, while Tiange went out for a walk. Soon after, the two of them roughly recounted Mo Tiange's experiences in the past year." After Lord Daoist Jinghe listened, he first probed Mo Tiange's cultivation level, then praised her. "Not bad. Although you've just advanced to the middle stage, your spiritual aura is very stable. The two of you dual cultivating is indeed a match made in heaven." Speaking of dual cultivation, Mo Tiange was still a bit embarrassed, so she immediately changed the subject. "Master, give me some advice. What should we do now?" "What should we do?" Lord Daoist Jinghe was flabbergasted. "What should we do is naturally up to you. Why are you asking me?" "Master." Mo Tiange's eyes widened. "We came to ask for your opinion." Lord Daoist Jinghe spread his hands and said, "My opinion is that you guys should do as you see fit." Mo Tiange and Qin Shi were both speechless. After thinking for a while, Qin Shi said, "Master, I think it's too dangerous to let Tiange go to Yunzhong alone. What do you think?" "Danger?" Lord Daoist Jinghe's gaze lingered on Mo Tiange for a while before he finally looked at Qin Shi. "When you were in the middle stage of the core formation realm, did Master ever stop you from doing what you wanted to do?" Qin Shi blushed and answered, "No. In fact, after he formed his gold core, he rarely stayed in the sect except for closed-door meditation. He often went out for several years at a time, but he felt it was different, so he emphasized, 'But she's going to Yunzhong.'" Lord Daoist Jinghe curled his lips. "So what if it's Yunzhong? Is it different from the celestial pole? Are there high-level cultivators all over the streets? Or are core formation cultivators especially good at fighting?" Qin Shi was completely speechless. Mo Tiange asked happily, "Master, you don't object?" Right after she finished talking about Qin Shi, Lord Daoist Jinghe turned around and glared at her. "You want to go to such a distant place? Have you prepared everything? Have you arranged everything? What about the plan?" Mo Tiange was embarrassed by the 3 questions. She said, "Aren't I asking for your opinion? If I'm sure I'll go, of course I'll arrange everything." "Humph." Lord Daoist Jinghe said rudely, "That's what you say, but the two of you are the same. You've already made a decision, so why are you asking? Don't you just want me to help you persuade someone?" Mo Tiange was also completely speechless. "You came to disturb my closed-door meditation for this kind of thing? Are you bored? Both of you, get out. Just tell me if you want to go or not. How old are you?" In Lord Daoist Jinghe's complaints, the two of them were kicked out of the closed-door meditation room. After they left the closed-door meditation room, the stone door behind them shut them out. Qin Shi and Mo Tiange looked at each other and saw helplessness in each other's eyes. They had no choice but to go back first. They returned to their cave in silence, each with their own thoughts. As soon as they opened the stone door, Yizhenji's cheerful voice came immediately. Auntie, Master, you're back. Mo Tienga forced a smile, but when she looked up, she was stunned. A foundation-building female disciple was standing next to Yizhenji. She was dressed in Xianqing School's robe, looking plain and gentle. Although she wasn't stunningly beautiful, she could still make people's eyes light up. When the woman saw them, she bowed and said, Grandmaster Shoujing, Martial Uncle Qingwei. Mo Tienga recognized the voice as soon as she heard it. It was Shui Linbua. Judging from her appearance, her injuries had healed. No need to be so polite, Qin Shi replied faintly, then he looked at Yizhenji. Are you going to move back? Yizhenji looked at them and scratched his head a little embarrassedly. Master. Wasn't this a joke that he had been living with Linbua in Mingxin residence? Mo Tienga knew he was thin-skinned, so she glared at Qin Shi and said with a smile, Linbua's injuries have healed? Upon hearing that, Shui Linbua stepped forward and saluted again. Thank you for your kindness, Martial Uncle Qingwei. Thanks to you, disciples' injuries have healed a lot. Mo Tienga nodded with a smile. Shui Linbua's behavior was well-mannered, and she looked much more mature than Yizhenji. Auntie. Yizhenji said with a smile, you've been out for a long time. I haven't congratulated you on your realm breakthrough. Mo Tienga smiled. You've made progress in your cultivation recently, but you still have to work hard. You've been in the middle stage of the foundation building realm for so long, so you should think of a way to advance to the late stage. I know. I've been cultivating hard. Don't worry, Auntie. After encouraging them with a few more words, Mo Tienga said, Jinji, your master and I have something to do. You can go ahead. Oh, okay, Yizhenji answered, watched the two of them go back to the cultivation room, and closed the stone door. Upon seeing them, Mo Tienga remembered to ask, has Shui Linbua's injuries healed? More or less. Qin Shi didn't care much. I heard from Jinji that martial nephew Han Roa of Seoul's Retreat Peak has excellent medical skills. I don't know what method he used to repair her dantian, but she's been feeling better these days and can come out and walk around. Han Roa was Kuang Zhu's Daoist name, but Mo Tienga felt that Kuang Zhu's real name was the most suitable for that senior martial brother. Speaking of this, Qin Shi asked again, what do you think about this Shui Linbua? Mo Tienga was stunned and asked, what do I think? Jinji likes her, so what do you want me to think? Don't you like her and want to take her as your disciple? Oh, about that. Mo Tienga remembered what she said. After thinking for a moment, she said, even if I want to take her as my disciple, it's not the right time to leave now. Besides, if I take her as my disciple, it'll be like reaching the sky in a single bound for her. It might even affect her cultivation, so it's better to let her grow up first. What you said makes sense. Qin Shi thought for a moment and agreed with her. Seriously speaking, she's a talented person. Since she's better, she often comes to help Jinji manage the cave. I can see that she's steadier than Jinji, but I don't trust her completely, so I can't entrust some things to her. Speaking of this, Mo Tienga said with a smile, when I went to Linhai this time, I took the opportunity to inquire about her. What she said was true, and her background wasn't fake. Of course, even if we want to cultivate her, I think we should take it slow. She's not a formal disciple of the sect. If she reaches the sky in a single bound, it'll be inconvenient for her to make friends with other disciples. You're right. Qin Shi agreed. In that case, when she recovers, we'll let her choose another cave and put her in the register like ordinary disciples. However, we can record her in the steward's hall and let her work here. If she's really reliable and worth cultivating, we'll naturally accept her as a disciple. That way, with her reminders from time to time, we won't have to worry about Jinji. Moreover, we can also concentrate on our cultivation if we have a disciple to do things for us in the future. Mo Tienga thought about it and felt his idea was good, so she had no objection. Let's do that. In Xianqing School, after becoming a core formation cultivator, people rarely appeared in front of others, and all matters were handled by disciples. There were very few people like Mo Tiange and Qin Shi. Yi Zhenji was Qin Shi's only disciple, so Mo Tiange didn't have time to accept him. Now, the two of them should consider this matter. Otherwise, it would be very inconvenient to have no trusted disciples in the school. After they finished talking about this, the two of them were silent for a while. After a while, they opened their mouths at the same time. Seeing that Mo Tiange also wanted to say something, they shut their mouths. The two of them looked at each other for a while. Mo Tiange coughed and said, "About that matter, do you agree?" After going around in circles, they finally reached the point. Qin Shi was silent for a while before he sighed. "I know. In fact, Master still spoke for you, but Master also scolded me," Mo Tiange muttered. "That's true, but..." Qin Shi smiled bitterly. "Alright, going to Yunzhong isn't a big deal. You're already a core formation cultivator, so you can deal with many things by yourself." He recalled that after he formed his gold core, he dared to go to any dangerous place. It was also those experiences that made him grow up quickly. Thinking about it this way, it was good for Mo Tiange to travel more. He didn't have any objection, but Mo Tiange actually felt embarrassed. She thought for a while then said, "How about this? I'll leave the specific route to you. If I don't come back and you're worried, you can come to me, N." Qin Shi answered softly then said, "Don't forget Wanderer Ziwei's request. These days, the steward's hall has been helping you find clues. When there are clues, I'll accompany you to finish this matter." "I'll remember." Chapter 341. Since she was determined to go to Yunzhong, Mo Tiange was busy these days. First of all, she had to refine the magic weapons she got from Mo Yaoqing's cave one by one so that she could fight with ease. Second, she had to leave enough medicinal pills for Qin Shi and Lord Daoist Jinghe for emergencies. Finally, she had to learn about Yunzhong as much as possible. Qin Shi paused his closed-door meditation to look for records about Yunzhong. To his surprise, Lord Daoist Jinyang actually knew something about Yunzhong. "You want to go to Yunzhong?" Lord Daoist Jinyang was quite surprised to hear him ask about Yunzhong. "Well..." Qin Shi paused and said frankly, "Tiange wants to go to Yunzhong." "Oh?" Lord Daoist Jinyang was puzzled. "It's not easy to go to Yunzhong. The South Sea is very dangerous. Even nascent soul cultivators can't cross the South Sea easily, let alone a core formation cultivator. Your master also knows about this, so why didn't he stop her?" Qin Shi said with a smile, "Tiange found a way to get there safely from the East Sea." "Is that so?" Lord Daoist Jinyang was even more surprised. After thinking about it, he was very happy. This is good. Yunzhong is a holy land for cultivation. If she can travel there, she'll definitely gain something. By the way, if she's sure this way is safe, we can let all the core formation cultivators in the school go there to gain experience and communicate with the cultivators in Yunzhong. Also, it's said that Yunzhong is very rich in cultivation resources. If Qingwei goes there, she can exchange some rare treasures in Kunwu with them. And this is a good way to make money. In the end, Lord Daoist Jinyang began to calculate how much profit this way could bring. If they could bring some of Kunwu's specialties to Yunzhong and exchange them for rare treasures in Kunwu, Xianqing School could gain a lot from it. With resources, he would be able to cultivate another batch of disciples. Qin Shi was helpless to see him like this. Although this senior martial brother Jinyang was a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, he was responsible for the school and was always very enthusiastic about these things. "Senior martial brother Jinyang, it seems you know about Yunzhong's situation?" His attention was drawn back. Lord Daoist Jinyang stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Although we don't have much contact with Yunzhong across the South Sea, occasionally, Yunzhong cultivators accidentally come to the Celestial Pole. In the past, I met a cultivator from Yunzhong and heard some things about Yunzhong from him." "Oh? How long ago was that? What was the cultivation level of this cultivator?" Is he from the South Sea? Oh, it's been 500 or 600 years. Lord Daoist Jinyang recalled. At that time, I was only in the early stage of the nascent soul realm, and I met a cultivator in the same realm as me by chance. He was also in the early stage of the nascent soul realm, and his means were very powerful. We had a fight, but it ended in a draw, so we admired each other and became good friends. He did come here via the South Sea. According to him, the South Sea is very dangerous and there are many high-level sea beasts there. He was lucky and managed to escape every time. Even so, it took him 2 years to reach the celestial pole. An early-stage nascent soul cultivator can cross the South Sea? Qin Shi was quite astonished. Wasn't it said that even late-stage nascent soul cultivators were likely to lament their inadequacy? Upon seeing Qin Shi's expression, Lord Daoist Jinyang chuckled and said, "Don't think he's ordinary. I can't say much about other things, but this person's escaping skills are top-notch. I dare say that even cultivators in the late nascent soul stage wouldn't be able to stop him. Even so, he had almost died in the South Sea despite his abilities. Therefore, if Qingwei really found a safe path, it'll be extremely beneficial to our entire sect." Qin Shi wasn't interested in this matter, so he just asked, "Senior Martial Brother Jinyang, can you tell me what's the situation in Yinzhong?" About that. Lord Daoist Jinyang recalled and said slowly, "The spirit veins in Yunzhong are very widely distributed, so there are a lot of cultivators. In addition to Tao cultivators, there are also Confucian cultivators, Buddhist cultivators, demon cultivators, and devil cultivators. Among them, Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism are called the righteous path, while demons and devils are called the evil path. Of course, the so-called righteous path and evil path are equivalent to our classification of righteous path and devil path. It's not that the righteous path is justice and the evil path is evil. Their righteous path and evil path are all mixed together, and there are very few disputes." Qin Shi patiently listened to Lord Daoist Jinyang for a long time, but in the end, it was all things recorded on Mo Yaoqing's jade slip. Taking advantage of Lord Daoist Jinyang's recollection, Qin Shi hurriedly asked, "Senior Martial Brother Jinyang, is there anything I need to pay attention to in Yinzhong? These things aren't important." "Oh, about that." Lord Daoist Jinyang thought for a moment then said, "It's nothing, but let Qingwei pay attention to one thing. The fighting methods of the cultivators in Yunzhong are different from those in the celestial pole, so before you get familiar with them, don't easily fight with others." "Oh." Qin Shi's interest was piqued. "What's the difference?" Lord Daoist Jinyang said, "It's a bit complicated. First, their magic weapons focus on speed, so you must be careful not to be preemptively attacked by others. Second, they have many magic weapons that can interfere with the operation of other people's spiritual aura. If you don't pay attention, it's easy to fall into their trap." This was something Mo Yaoqing didn't explain in detail, but it was very helpful to Mo Tiange. When Lord Daoist Jinyang finished, before leaving, Qin Shi asked again, "Senior Martial Brother Jinyang, what happened to the cultivator in Yinzhong who came to the celestial pole?" Lord Daoist Jinyang was stunned, then he answered, "He stayed in the celestial pole for several years, but in the end, he still wanted to return to Yunzhong. After he left, we haven't heard any news about him. Maybe he died in the South Sea, or maybe he safely returned to Yunzhong." Qin Shi was silent, then he sighed and stood up. "Thank you for telling me this, Senior Martial Brother Jinyang. I'll tell Tiange about many things, so I'll go back first." "Hey, Shoujing!" Lord Daoist Jinyang shouted behind him, "Remember to let Qingwei pay more attention to any special spiritual objects that can be exchanged." Mo Tiange was cleaning the virtual sky world. Even if there were jade boxes, spiritual talismans, and other things that could seal the spiritual aura of 10,000-year-old spiritual plants would always lose their spiritual nature after being stored for a long time, and they could be stored longer if they were refined into medicinal pills. During the 10 years she and Qin Shi were trapped in the virtual sky world, they refined a lot of medicinal pills, and most of them could be kept. In addition, Qin Shi prepared a lot of things for her. Although most of them were useless, they were his kind intentions, so she accepted them all. In fact, she had a purpose for going to Yunzhong that she didn't tell them. Mo Yaoqing once said that her art of Sunu came from Danxia sect, and the art of Sunu in Danxia sect even included the parts above the nascent soul realm. If she had a chance, she wanted to get that cultivation technique from Danxia sect and compare it with her own. Maybe it would give her some inspiration. Of course, this was just in passing. If it was difficult to achieve her purpose, she wouldn't force it. While she was cleaning, she heard Qin Shi calling her from outside. Tiange. She opened the virtual sky world and Qin Shi came in. Thinking about this virtual sky world, she could clearly feel that her virtual sky world wasn't as profound as Zhong Muling's. Was it because her realm wasn't high enough? What? Are you all ready? Qin Shi looked at the bottles and jars on the floor. What are these for? For you and Master. Mo Tiange counted them one by one. These are for Master, these are for you, and these are for Jinji. As for this box, it's for spiritual beasts, so I'll give it to you. Qin Shi looked at these things and was stunned. So many. Not only did they cover the whole table, but there were also a lot of them on the floor. These medicinal pills would probably last them for 100 years. Mo Tiange said, these are the finished products we concocted last time. I've kept the medicinal pills for the core formation realm, and the rest are for you. Qin Shi thought for a moment. He and his master were in the nascent soul realm, and Jinji was in the foundation building realm, so they just happened to be in the nascent soul realm. It wouldn't affect her, so he said, alright, I'll take these out later. By the way, I went to ask Senior Marshal Brother Jinyang just now. He told me to tell you something. After listening to Qin Shi repeat what Lord Daoist Jinyang said, she felt helpless. Why is Marshal Uncle Jinyang so wordy? It's not like I'm going there to do business. Qin Shi understood her mood very well. He said with a smile, he's the head Grand Supreme Elder, so of course the things he thinks about are different from us. You should listen to him a little. Mo Tiange also knew that as a sect elder, she naturally had to think about things that were beneficial to Xianqing School. After tidying up everything, she said, okay, pack up your things and go out. When the two of them came out of the virtual sky world, Mo Tiange called Yi Jinji and Shui Linbo over. Auntie, Master. Greetings to Grandmaster Shoujing, Marshal Uncle Qingwei. No need to be so polite. Mo Tiange looked up. Shui Linbo was still as steady and well-mannered as an ordinary disciple. She didn't seem complacent because of her relationship with Shinji. She nodded secretly. If Shui Linbo treated people like this, it would make up for Jinji's shortcomings, and she could do things at ease in the future. Auntie, Master, why did you call us here? Yi Jinji couldn't help but ask cautiously when he saw their serious expressions. Qin Shi glanced at him and said, your aunt has to go out for a while. It may take a long time, so I called you here to tell you something. Huh? Yi Jinji looked at Mo Tiange. Auntie, are you going out to do something? Or travel? I'm going out to travel. Mo Tiange said with a smile, you don't have to worry too much about it. It's just that this time I may be out for a long time. But, Auntie, didn't you just come back? Yi Jinji was puzzled. You guys didn't return for 10 years, and it's only been 2 years since you came back, but Auntie went out again. This time, it's only been a month. Auntie, is there something important for you to go out so frequently? She couldn't explain it clearly in a short time, so Mo Tiange didn't explain in detail. She just said, there's something, but it's not a big deal. Jinji, Auntie may be away for a few years to more than 10 years this time. During this time, your master has to enter closed-door meditation to stabilize his realm, and your grandmaster happens to be healing his injuries, so you have to rely on yourself for cultivation. Don't worry, Auntie, Yi Jinji said, I'll do as I see fit. If there's anything I don't understand, I can communicate with my fellow martial brothers. If I still don't understand, I can ask Marshal Uncle Mingjin. When you're not here, I'll take good care of the cave. Mo Tiange nodded with a smile and turned to Shui Linbo. Linbo, I've discussed it with your Grandmaster Shoujing. After you recover from your injuries, go to the Steward's Hall to register and officially belong to my Clear Spring Peak. In addition, while your Grandmaster Shoujing is in closed-door meditation, you'll help Shinji take care of the cave. You can inform the Steward's Hall about this. Upon hearing this, Shui Linbo was overjoyed and excitedly bowed to express her gratitude. Thank you, Martial Uncle Qingwei. Thank you, Grandmaster Shoujing. I'll do my best. Mo Tiange smiled. Shui Linbo was a smart person and knew they were giving her a chance. As long as she seized the opportunity, she would be a real talent, and they wouldn't treat her unfairly in the future. Chapter 342. Several days later, 2 escape lights rose from Clear Spring Peak. After a short pause, the white one flew over Mount Taikong and disappeared into the sky. The red streak remained in midair and did not move for a long time. After a while, Qin Shi sighed softly. He looked at the empty sky, waved his sleeves, and landed. Since Mo Tiange was gone, he should continue his closed-door meditation. He knew very well that as a cultivator, this kind of separation was normal, so he just suppressed the slight reluctance in his heart and calmly returned to his cave. Master. Yi Zhenji greeted him. Qin Shi smiled. Go cultivate. Your aunt is not here, so you have to be more serious, understand? Yi Zhenji smiled. Master, don't worry. I'm not a child anymore. I know these things. Qin Shi was stunned. Thinking of this child's performance in the past 3 years, he also smiled. After all, you've gone through experience. You're different now. He walked into his closed-door meditation room with his hands behind his back and said, I won't come out for 10 years, so I'll leave the cave to you. Don't disturb me unless it's urgent. Got it, Master. Mo Tiange traveled at a moderate pace. Half a month later, she appeared in Linhai again. This time, she already had a goal, so she just greeted Wei Haolan and went out of the sea along the familiar route. As soon as Xiaofan was in the sea, it became very excited and happily flopped in the sea. Although there was water in the virtual sky world, the stream wasn't the sea, and it was a sea beast that lived in the sea since it was a child. Mo Tiange smiled as she watched it swim round and round. Finally, it returned to her side, raised its head, and said, Master, where are we going? To the place your grandfather said, she said, but you're not familiar with this place, so come back first. I'll take you flying. No need. Xiaofan flicked its tail, jumped from the water flexibly, and made a beautiful arc. This is the sea. We sea dragons can smell the sea, so we won't get lost in the sea. Mo Tiange was stunned. You've never been here. It's so far from where you live. Can you swim back? Yes. Yi Fun nodded seriously. Master, don't worry. This is the instinct of us sea dragons. As it spoke, it looked at her pitifully. Master, can you sit on me and I'll swim you to the destination? I want to swim. Faced with such a pleading gaze, what else could Mo Tiange say? She looked down and saw that its injury had healed. Its tail was strong and flexible. The strength of that swing just now could probably crack a stone. Of course, it would not be a problem for her to sit on it. All right, let me know if you're tired. Yes. Yi Fun jumped up happily and fell back into the water. She said hurriedly, Master, come up quickly. We'll leave now. Upon seeing its impatient appearance, Mo Tiange couldn't help but smile. She cast a simple water-repelling art, then sat on Xiaofan's back and let it lead the way. Xiaofan's body was more than 10 feet long, its tail was flexible, and its fins were powerful. In the sea, it was like an arrow leaving the bow. Although its speed was not as fast as her escape light, it was not much slower. In the beginning, Mo Tiange still compared the route she had corrected to see if she was swimming in the right direction. Later, she found that Xiaofan's sense of direction in the sea was extremely accurate, so she no longer paid attention to it. Instead, she used the time on the road to study Mo Yaoqing's cultivation experience. One person and one beast swam leisurely to the depths of the East Sea. In the coastal waters, there were only some low-rank sea beasts. When those sea beasts saw the fifth-rank Xiaofan, they naturally didn't dare to approach. As they went deeper and deeper into the East Sea, although some high-level sea beasts appeared occasionally, they didn't dare to approach Mo Tiange because of her powerful momentum. A sixth-rank person and a fifth-rank sea dragon, ordinary sea beasts couldn't afford to provoke them. 2 months later, when Mo Tiange felt the pressure of a seventh-rank sea beast, she reluctantly put Xiaofan into the spiritual beast bag and flew high in the sky with her cloud-treading boots. The deeper they went, the higher the rank of the sea beasts. This time, she had a clear goal: it was better to avoid these sea beasts. When the aura of the seventh-rank sea beast disappeared, Mo Tiange released Xiaofan and asked, "Xiaofan, can you point the way if we're not in the sea?" Xiaofan floated in the air and nodded. "I can, but it'll be a little slow." That's good." It didn't matter if it was a little slow, but the most important thing was safety. If Xiaofan swam in the sea, the human cultivator's aura would probably alarm those high-level demonic beasts, and a fierce battle would be inevitable. If they flew in the air, as long as they were high enough, those demonic beasts wouldn't be able to sense them accurately, and they generally wouldn't act rashly. The boring journey lasted for 4 months, the 1 month the old sea dragon said was Mo Yaoqing's speed. When they arrived in the celestial pole, Mo Yaoqing was already a nascent soul cultivator. Even if they just traveled leisurely, her speed was much faster than Mo Tiange's. 4 months later, seeing that there were more and more high-level sea beasts around, Mo Tiange finally found the big island with the volcano. She breathed a sigh of relief. If she still couldn't find it, she would have to consider going back first. 7th-rank sea beasts were quite common here, and maybe an 8th-rank sea beast would appear at any time. That would be dangerous. "Master, it's there." Xiaofan's voice rang in her mind. Mo Tiange looked down and saw that the big island had a circumference of several hundred miles, more than 10 times larger than the small island where Mo Yaoqing lived. Moreover, the terrain was completely different. Most of the island was rocky, overgrown with ravines, and mixed with sand and stones. There was only a small amount of soil, so even plants were rare. The most important thing was that there was no spiritual aura on the island, so there weren't even demonic beasts nearby. This was good news for Mo Tiange. There were no spirit veins on the island, so it couldn't attract demonic beasts, so she didn't have to face any unknown demonic beasts. In the center of the island, there was a bulging volcano. There was no trace of an eruption, and it was cold without a trace of heat. Mo Tiange flew to the top of the volcano and looked down. It was dark inside, and she couldn't see anything clearly. She scanned it with her divine sense and didn't find any danger, so she slowly descended to the crater. As she descended lower and lower, Mo Tiange gradually saw what was inside the volcano. There was no lava, no heat, only cold volcanic walls. It was very dark inside, so she couldn't see anything clearly. Mo Tiange opened her palm and light gathered in it. The heaven and earth fan appeared in her hand, and the fan pendant emitted a faint white light. When she explored Mo Yaoqing's cave last time, she felt it was very inconvenient to take out the Mother Moonstone for illumination, so she simply polished the Mother Moonstone into a fan pendant and hung it on the heaven and earth fan, which was much more convenient to hold. "Grandpa said there's water down there, so let me go down first," said Xiaofan, who landed behind her. Mo Tiange paused and nodded. Not long after Xiaofan landed, Mo Tiange heard the sound of water, and then Xiaofan's voice rang out. "Master, come down. The water isn't very deep." Holding the heaven and earth fan, Mo Tiange carefully descended to the bottom of the volcano. She looked up and was a little stunned. "Is there a road here?" There was a shallow stream at the bottom of the volcano, but she didn't see any road around. In the water, Xiaofan said, "Master, sit on my back." After thinking for a short while, Mo Tiange cast a water avoidance spell and sat on Xiaofan's back. Xiaofan flicked its tail and suddenly dived into the water. The mother moonstone emitted a faint light, but it only illuminated the narrow space around it. Mo Tiange released her divine sense and found that there was a passage in the water, but she didn't know where it led. As soon as Xiaofan entered the water, it was extremely vigorous. After swimming for a while, it sped up. Mo Tiange only felt that it dived deeper and deeper, and the pressure on the water avoidance spell's spiritual aura shield also increased. Of course, she was now a core formation cultivator, so the pressure at the bottom of the water was nothing to her, but she was confused. Water flowed downwards, and Xiaofan dived into the water. Was this a waterway? According to the fragmentary records on Mo Yaoqing's jade slip, it took her a lot of time to come to the celestial pole. Did she have to dive in the water for several months? Fortunately, she didn't doubt it for too long. After swimming for a long time, Xiaofan began to float up. The speed at which it floated up was getting faster and faster. Suddenly, with a splash, a person and a beast broke out of the water. Countless water droplets dripped from the spiritual aura shield. Mo Tiange waved her hand, removed the water avoidance spell, and released her divine sense. This was an underground river. It was winding and led to a very far place, and her divine sense couldn't feel the end. As for the surrounding rock walls, they were completely irregular in shape. Xiaofan carried her and swam forward slowly. The river was very cold. Even though it was a demonic beast, it still felt uncomfortable. "Xiaofan, how about I take you flying?" Xiaofan shook its head and refused. "No, master, I like the feeling of swimming in the water. But, this water, it's okay." Xiaofan patted its tail. In an instant, a layer of green aura emerged from its scales and wrapped its whole body. "This way, I won't feel uncomfortable." Mo Tiange looked at it carefully and found that it was also a kind of protective spiritual aura, so she nodded. "Okay." They didn't know how long they swam in the dark river. There was only the sound of water and Xiaofan swimming around them. Mo Tiange held the heaven and earth fan and let her divine sense spread all the time. There were no spirit veins in this river, so even if there were fish in the water, they were just ordinary fish and didn't dare to approach her and Xiaofan. Several days later, Mo Tiange frowned and sensed spiritual aura. Then, Xiaofan also stopped. "Master, there are spirit veins ahead." Mo Tiange used her divine sense to observe for a while and said, "There are no living things. Let's continue." Xiaofan responded and continued to swim forward. The spiritual aura was getting thicker and thicker. Mo Tiange looked at the surrounding rock walls and found that it was a spirit stone mine. However, the grade of the spirit stones was not very high. It seemed to be a small mine. One person and one beast passed through the middle of the spirit stone mine. With her sharp eyes, Mo Tiange found that something seemed to be growing on a spirit stone and said hurriedly, "Wait." Xiaofan stopped. "What's wrong?" From the rock wall, Mo Tiange carefully dug out a piece of jade that was shining with a sparkling white light and examined it carefully. "Spirit gathering stone?" Looking at the jade in her hand, she was surprised. "It's actually a spirit gathering stone." Hearing the sound, Xiaofan asked curiously, "Master, what's a spirit gathering stone?" After confirming that the thing in her hand was indeed a spirit gathering stone, Mo Tiange put it into her Qianquan bag and said, "A spirit gathering stone is a kind of jade that occasionally appears in spirit stone mines. It looks similar to spirit stones, but it has an effect of greatly condensing spiritual aura. In the process of concocting pills and refining tools, how to condense spiritual aura and seal it in medicinal pills and magic weapons is the most difficult process. With a spirit gathering stone, the success rate of concocting pills and refining tools can be improved." "Oh. Demonic beasts didn't understand concocting pills and refining tools, so Xiaofan only responded with a half-understanding. Mo Tiange didn't expect that a spirit-gathering stone would appear in this small mine, but she was pleasantly surprised. She told Xiaofan, swim around a few more times. We'll look for it. Chapter 343. Unfortunately, she didn't find any more spirit-gathering stones. Mo Tiange thought about it and shook her head with a smile. Although spirit-gathering stones weren't amazing treasures, they weren't something that could be found everywhere. It was already difficult to find one in such a small spirit stone vein. How many more did she want to find? She waved her hand to call Xiaofan back and said, "Let's keep going." Xiaofan responded and swam forward with her on its back. This spirit stone vein was really small. In just a moment, they swam out of its range and entered a dark underground river. Mo Tiange was used to this kind of darkness, so she simply calmed down and silently comprehended her state of mind. According to the celestial pole, the difference between Dao cultivators and demonic cultivators was that Dao cultivators had to pay attention to the cultivation of their state of mind while improving their strength. Otherwise, they would be stuck at the bottleneck of a breakthrough. Demonic cultivators, on the other hand, didn't care about this. They only needed to absorb spiritual aura and turn it into devil aura. Therefore, the cultivation method of the demonic path was condemned by the righteous path as unorthodox. This had nothing to do with right or wrong. In fact, the demonic path was indeed more likely to be possessed by the devil than the righteous path. Because the cultivation of one's state of mind had to keep up with one's realm, the higher a cultivator's cultivation level was, the more restrictions there would be. For example, aura refining cultivators often did evil things, but when they reached the foundation building realm, they often began to cultivate their mind and nature because they had to overcome their inner demons in order to form their gold core. Core formation and nascent soul cultivators were even more restrained. If they didn't have a grudge or great benefits, they generally wouldn't kill. Mo Tiange didn't think this was abnormal before, but after she formed her gold core, she thought this matter was a bit strange. The law of the jungle was the rule of the cultivation world. But why did there have to be an inner demon when it came to realm advancement? This made cultivators suppress their murderous nature. Of course, not all cultivators followed this rule. Master Song Feng was one of those high-level cultivators who killed indiscriminately. However, her master also told her that the old man Song Feng was a monster who was neither human nor ghost nor monster. He couldn't be regarded as a normal person at all. Thinking up to this point made Mo Tiange confused again. She felt she seemed to have overlooked something, but she also felt that she had grasped a key point. She closed her eyes and immersed herself in the darkness, slowly recalling. Every day was a boring journey. In the end, even Xiaofan became impatient. In order to appease it, Mo Tiange gave it a medicinal pill every day. Every time it ate a medicinal pill, it would obediently continue on their journey. When it got greedy, it would refuse to leave and insist on eating more. Mo Tiange was actually happy to see Xiaofan like this. No matter how well-behaved Xiaofan was, she was still a child to the sea dragon. It was too depressing if she didn't have the temper of a child. Now that it had returned to its original nature, it meant that it was closer to him. One person and one beast walked, sometimes stopping, sometimes walking. Because of the existence of the virtual sky world, they didn't find it very difficult to pass through this underground river. Gradually, time passed day by day. It seems to be getting hotter. Mo Tiange didn't use her water-repelling art. Instead, she stretched her hand into the river to explore it. Yifan still swam forward slowly and replied, "A little, but it doesn't matter, master, I'm not afraid of the heat." Although she said that, Mo Tiange didn't feel at ease. She didn't forget that this was a passage at the bottom of the volcano. Although the volcano had long stopped erupting, who knew if something would suddenly happen? After swimming forward for a while, she saw that the water was getting hotter and hotter. Mo Tiange reached in and found that it was much higher than her body temperature, which was really abnormal. They had been swimming in this underground river for a month, and the water had always been cold. Now that it suddenly became hot, there must be something strange. Xiaofan. Seeing that the water was steaming, Mo Tiange decisively shouted to stop it. This water is unusual. Let's wait for a while. Yifan raised its head and said, Master, do you think the water is too hot? Mo Tiange frowned. We're going through the passage at the bottom of the volcano. If there's lava in the depths, it'll be troublesome. Volcanic lava was a kind of earthly fire. If the grade of the lava was very high, it would be very troublesome to block the way. Although Mo Yaoqing had walked this path, it had been more than 5,000 years after all. She didn't know whether there would be any accidents. Yifan said, Master, I'm not afraid of the heat. Let me explore the way. This. Mo Tiange hesitated. What if there's danger? I'm already in the 5th rank, so I'm not afraid. Yifan said, Master, don't treat me like a child who doesn't know anything. In the clan, I'm also an uncle. Oh. Hearing its serious tone, Mo Tiange thought it was right, so she smiled and said, All right, go and have a look. If there's anything wrong, come back immediately or call me. Yifan answered. When she floated in the air, it flicked its tail and went into the water. Mo Tiange looked at the place where it disappeared with a smile. Xiaohua and Feifei were very cute, but they couldn't talk. After having Yifan, she felt less lonely, as if she had someone to accompany her every day. She couldn't help but think of Qin Shi, who was already thousands of miles away. What was he doing? Was his cultivation going well? After a while, she heard the sound of water. Yifan finally came back. It came out of the water with a splash and said cheerfully, Master, we're here. Huh? What's going on? Yifan said happily, I swam for a long time and found there was no way to go. Then I dived and found another waterway leading to a hot spring. Hot spring. Mo Tiange was happy. This road led to a hot spring. Did that mean they'd reached their destination? Master, come on, let's go out. Yifan was more eager than her. Mo Tiange didn't delay and sat on its back. Then let's go. One person and one beast couldn't wait. Yifan waved its fins and rushed into the water like an arrow leaving the bow. Sure enough, they didn't swim far. They reached the end of the waterway after walking for a month. Yifan had already explored the way, so it just dived into the water. After swimming in the water for a long time and making many turns, Mo Tiange almost couldn't tell the route. It finally began to float. The water was getting hotter and hotter, and Mo Tiange guessed there must be a volcano here that hadn't erupted for a long time. But she didn't know if there were any houses near this hot spring. There was some spiritual aura here, so there should be a small spirit vein outside. Maybe there were individual cultivators living here. While thinking about it, Lil Fan swam faster and faster, and began to float up. Suddenly, a faint light appeared on top of its head, and then the light became brighter and brighter. A man and a beast emerged from the water with a splash. After walking in the underground waterway for a month, Mo Tiange hadn't seen the sun for a long time, so she couldn't help but narrow her eyes to block the light. Monster, monster. At this time, she suddenly heard human voices, followed by chaotic footsteps and panicked screams. Mo Tiange's divine sense had long sensed the existence of these people, but they were all mortals, so she didn't care. Presumably, they were frightened by Yifan's appearance. After adapting to the light, she put down her arms and quickly glanced around. This hot spring wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. It covered an area of several acres. Steam was rising from the water, and the surrounding was shaded by greenery. At first glance, she felt the scenery was excellent, as beautiful as a fairyland. Yifan, let's go up. She patted Yifan's head, brushed her sleeves, and gently floated ashore without getting wet. Although Yifan didn't want to leave the water, she obediently followed her. The noises on the shore became even more chaotic. Mo Tienga looked up and saw some married women wearing coarse clothes hurriedly running away, leaving behind clothes and clothes pestles all over the ground. She shook her head and ignored them. She thought the women here weren't any different from those in the celestial pole. Their clothes were also similar, but their accents were a bit different. With this thought in mind, she slowly walked out of the hot spring with Yifan. Some courtyard walls were exposed in a place a little further away from the hot spring, which seemed to belong to a big family in the secular world. Mo Tienga sensed that the place where the courtyard was located was the place with the densest spiritual aura in this spirit vein. She also sensed the breath of low-level cultivators inside. Could it be that this was a cultivation family in the secular world? She smiled and thought of an idea. She said to Yifan, "Yifan, there are a lot of people here. Why don't you go into the spiritual beast bag first?" Yifan had always been very obedient. Hearing her words, it obediently agreed and went back into the spiritual beast bag. After settling Yifan down, Mo Tienga restrained her spiritual aura pressure and walked a short distance away. Then she saw several well-dressed men walking towards her. They walked hurriedly as if they had something urgent to do. Judging from their clothes, they seemed to be the guards of a big family. When they came closer and saw her standing not far from the lake, they were surprised. Then the leader, who looked like a housekeeper, walked towards her with the group of men, stopped in front of her, and respectfully said, "Greetings, fairy." She had restrained her spiritual aura, so these people were mortals with a little spiritual aura. They could only feel the rich spiritual aura on her body, but they couldn't distinguish her cultivation level. Mo Tienga nodded lightly. Seeing her graceful bearing and amiable attitude, the housekeeper didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly asked, "We're from the Lu family. May I ask, fairy, are you passing by here?" Mo Tienga saw the man was very respectful, so she also answered politely, "I'm an individual cultivator from another place. I came here by chance and accidentally startled mortals." "What Lu family are you talking about? Is it a cultivation family here?" "Fairy, it turns out you're an individual cultivator from another place." The man said happily after getting the answer, "Our LV family is the largest cultivation family on South Pole Island. It's rare for a fellow cultivator to come here. My family's old master will be very happy if he knows. Fairy, would you like to be a guest of our LV family?" Hearing that this place was indeed called South Pole Island, Mo Tienga felt a little relieved. According to Yifan, South Pole Island was already within the scope of Yunzhong. So, she finally arrived in Yunzhong smoothly. Her gaze fell on the LV family's housekeeper. This person was obviously a mortal, but he had spiritual aura. Although he hadn't reached the level of refining qi into spirit, he had already tempered his body with spiritual aura. Mo Tienga thought that Yunzhong was indeed a holy land for cultivators. Even these mortals in front of her were obviously cultivators. This was her first time in Yunzhong, so she needed to inquire about some information first. It would be good to go to this LV family to have a look. With this thought in mind, Mo Tienga said with a smile, "It's naturally good to have a fellow cultivator invite me. I'll accept your invitation then." You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.